Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the L1 show. You may notice that we're missing someone today.
It's fine.
It's fine. Sometimes things come up.
Ah.
So it's just the two of us today. So it'll maybe a little bit of a weird show, but that's all right.
It's fine.
The boiler snake might pop up.
I'll try to also be the darkness in addition to my usual self. So it's like I'll be the darkness in the stories.
I feel like there's kind of a gradient usually. So like Ryan's on the darkest end of the spectrum, you're kind of in the middle, and usually I'm on the brighter side. Though sometimes the darkness
We're rubbing
creeps
off
through
on
too.
you, though.
Yeah.
You know what else is rubbing off on the Supreme Court? Thoughts about AI. The Supreme Court could be about to decide the legal fate of AI search. Are robots responsible for what they say?
That's 230, right?
Yeah.
Falls under that.
Yeah, so,
It's how they aggregate it. It's the same thing with like search engine.
I mean, it really comes down to, are they deliberately promoting this? So this is a court case where the dude was recommended content from terrorists, basically.
As sometimes you just stumble across on the internet, but this time it was in AI chat.
And it turns out that the algorithm looks for content that people engage with. And so it's like based on the stuff that you engaged with, I'm going to search for similar stuff. And it turns out that pops up. And so just, dear reader, as a mental exercise, anytime something like this comes up with AI, I want you to mentally substitute AI with linear algebra. And so let's reread the headline. Supreme Court could be about to decide the fate of linear algebra search, as in using linear algebra in the algorithm. And when you think about it in those terms, it becomes a much less intimidating and much less wrong. It's like, can robots be responsible for recommending something? And it's like, well,
Because it's just a robot that's aggregating
Yeah.
other content.
the algorithm is like, okay, based on some parameters, you do a search. So if you go to, think of it in very basic terms. If you do a Google search with keywords, you go to Google and take all the AI and everything out of it. Think to the beginning of search engines. I want to search for content that contains the word foo. I put in foo and it tells me what's there based on foo. But now what you're searching for is a much more complicated profile. The search engine already knows some things about you. If I go to a search engine, chances are most of the time I'm searching for something technical. I'm not searching for recipes or books
Or plants.
Plants.
We have totally different search histories.
Yeah, and so when I type in something that could be ambiguous, the search engine disambiguates it based on whatever profile it thinks that I have. And so that's kind of how the YouTube recommendation algorithm
Kind of works. It doesn't really work very well anymore. But
the algorithm knows that Ryan really likes Claire Saffitz, and so it's going to find similar content and recommend that.
I logged into our YouTube account earlier today. Have you been looking up like aquarium stuff? Because there were a bunch of recommendations for aquariums.
No,
Or not a bunch, but like 2 or 3.
one of our editors has a goldfish that has outgrown their tank.
Oh, and I bet they looked it up and they were like, I was like, had Wendell been looking at getting a fish? That's not like him.
Nope. But we're also polluting the algorithm by
Yeah,
having
because
this.
all of us log into it. So there's probably going to be garden stuff on there too now because
Yeah. So, and we're spending a lot of time on just one story, but this is important to understand because this is also the thin end of a wedge. Like, I really think that Google's lawyer is either too smart to dumb it down for the rest of the court, or they did a really bad job representing the fact that the AI involved here ultimately is just linear algebra.
right. They think it's a real person, and it's like,
Yeah.
that's not quite right.
And it's like, are they responsible for that? But politicians wanting to use big tech as their own weapon, I think, can use this as a thin end of a wedge to try to take some of the protections that they have with Section 230 away. Because I think the protections of Section 230, it probably does more good than harm. And any kind of harm out of this, like any kind of change as a result of something like this for what, was recommended by the algorithm, as much as I dislike the algorithm and what it does to us and blah, 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 it's probably going to do more harm than good to make the type of changes contemplated by something like this, or to make the individual parties responsible. So I hope the Supreme Court doesn't weaken Section 230, as I fear that they might, But this article talks about some very superficial things like, oh, this is, how does this really impact AI for the recommendation algorithm and blah, blah, blah. And I don't think this goes deep enough. I mean, you could make the same argument about any of Google's recommendation algorithms, whether or not AI is involved. If you search something innocent and you get some result that is, not super awesome, or you stumble into something, does that make Google liable, or is it make Google liable for returning content that some user posted somewhere and the search engine doesn't know? The only fix for that is to ultimately make it a whitelist.
Right.
Which would be bad. And I've rambled.
That's censorship.
Yeah, and I've rambled way too long about that. But you know what else is basically just whitelisting things and not letting business unfold organically?
The SEC proposal could bar investment advisors from keeping assets at crypto firms.
Okay. Why don't we go ahead and bar them from investing in fossil fuels too?
Oh, yeah, I don't want to talk about that.
Engagement challenge. It's like, what about, companies that have had their supply chain linked to organ harvesting? Should we bar them from investing in those as well?
DOJ reportedly accelerates Apple antitrust investigation. They're like, Apple really gives a lot of consideration to their own apps and their own ecosystem. And it's like, well, you think? It's amazing that nothing's been done before.
I don't understand how we spend so many mental cycles on this.
Yeah.
If you could put the Apple operating system for phones or other things on non-Apple hardware, would there be a viable market for non-Apple hardware running Apple software? Seems like the answer to that is, well, of course there would be a viable market. So if I would like to run Apple's operating system and I would like to run software from a third party, but I would like to not run Apple's hardware, and that's physically possible, would that exist in an open market? I think the answer is yes, it would have to. You could buy an Apple phone or a phone that is compatible with an Apple phone or an Apple operating system that has a replaceable battery and that Apple is not actively trying to sabotage. I think a lot of people would buy that.
Here's the thing, though, like, line has to go up.
How do you vote with your wallet when your only choices are
Apple or perish?
Yeah. It's hard to vote with your wallet in that case, don't you think?
I mean, there's not a whole lot of options either for certain things.
And it's funny that you say there's not a lot of options and, the only other option is perish, because that's kind of also related to...
Hey, Justice Department says John Deere should let farmers repair their tractors. And another story that I was like, well, of course. Like, I skimmed this story because I was like, well, yeah, duh.
Yeah, the Justice Department, it's funny, though, because the Justice Department usually doesn't look at arguments and just say, this is the dumbest thing we've ever heard. But there's a lot of words in here in the opinion from the Justice Department to say, this is the dumbest thing we've ever heard. Arguments from John Deere as to why their ecosystem should remain closed and why they should control both the hardware and software. This sounds really familiar with the whole Apple ecosystem. It's like, we need to control everything for the user security and blah, blah, blah. It's like, this wheat thresher will literally start eating children if we let farmers work on it.
Do you think the government, too, is kind of having a moment of like, ooh, that could be, if we can't use tractors effectively, that might be bad for national security in terms of like food security.
Yeah, if something went catastrophically wrong, like the John Deere update satellites get compromised by
a balloon
or North Korea or whatever. Or maybe they're looking at, some of those stolen tractors that were rendered into bricks. It's like, oh, this tractor was stolen from some field in Ukraine and now it's in, Argentina. Oh, look at that. It doesn't work anymore. Huh. That's interesting. You know what else is interesting?
Elizabeth Warren is building an anti-crypto army. Some conservatives are on board. Rare bipartisan, like the meme where they're holding the two arms together.
It's like we don't want crypto. This is something.
I wasn't sure how to read this. I was like, there's not really anything new in here, and it is from Politico, so keep that in mind. But it's like, we have multiple senators who would probably filibuster something like this, Blockchain Association CEO
Kristen Smith said. But gone are the days of FTX. Gone are the days of Larry David saying, but it turns out Larry David was right. He was right. I'm of course talking about the FTX commercial. Everybody always remembers,
was it Matt Damon's?
Matt Damon,
Yeah.
but the Larry David commercial was also really
That was
funny.
only a year ago because the Super Bowl
Yeah.
just happened.
Yeah.
So like literally just a year ago.
Line got to go up.
Yeah, line went straight down for crypto.
Speaking of people that still didn't get the memo.
Arkansas proposes requiring ID to watch porn online.
So
This is one of 7 states that are proposing this right now.
just-
Louisiana,
Wow.
Virginia, I think Texas was one. I don't think it's necessarily a bad idea to try to keep kids from looking at adult content online, but this is not the way to go about it because it's never going to be effective.
parenting.
Yeah,
Parenting is good.
keeping an eye on what your kids watch
Parenting would be really good.
because any kid can just click a thing and say, "Yeah, I'm the right age," or they can steal your driver's license.
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
put it in there if they were to implement that system.
And we'll have a nonsense story on Friday where, spoiler alert, someone was able to go to the library and find this kind of material. But what constitutes that? I mean, there's okay, yeah, there are websites, but what if you have a genuinely curious teenager that is looking up, I don't know, Daniel Steele novels? Is that a thing? I don't know if that's a thing.
It was a long time ago. I don't know if teenagers look that up anymore. But you could even do so. Like something I used to run into as an art student, we did figure drawing, and so sometimes you would look up a reference photo and.
Oh,
Oh my gosh. The amount of times though it was frustrating, I will say, like you're looking for like just a particular reference for like a pose and the amount of other material you'd come across. It was like, I don't want this. I'm trying to learn how to draw.
oh, we're going to, what is it? Is it catfish that will bite your fingers? Like there's a
Yeah, you
fish.
noodle them. You put them into the riverbank and then they'll grab down on your fingers and then you pull them out.
So the way to stop that from happening to children, so they never experience the discomfort of a fish nibbling on their fingers in a non-destructive kind of a way, is to completely destroy all of the fish in the pond.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, like I said, I don't want kids to be looking at porn at a young age, but this just isn't going to work the way they think it will.
There's no substitute for just watching the children.
Right.
It's like, I think my 12-year-old should have unsupervised access to computers that have a basic internet filter. That's your decision as a parent, not the library.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm getting ahead. Foreshadowing.
Biden FCC nominee slams critics, says ISPs shouldn't get to choose their regulators. Amen. Another one that was like, okay.
Yeah, so the things are coming to a head with the FCC thing. There's supposed to be 5 people. There's only 4. There's been a nominee waiting in the
For a
wings
long
for a
time,
year.
we've done a few stories about this.
ISPs are kind of upset because the revolving door didn't revolve in this particular case. It has, perhaps, for at least 2 of the other people on the board, but not for this person. And so ISPs, of course, are screaming bloody murder because they know that net neutrality is back on the table, and they know that they can't use weasel words and shenanigans to do an end run around regulation. Like, oh, the FTC should be regulating communications. So isn't communications in the name of this agency? Oh, no, it's fine.
It's whichever one we like a little bit better is the one who should be regulating us right now.
Yeah, exactly. And it's funny how the legal system works like that when you're incredibly wealthy.
Yeah. Prosecutors urge tight limits on Bankman-Fried's internet use.
So this
How
guy,
does this man still have internet access?
he's under house arrest, but he's in what the judge called it a garden of electronic devices. And they're a little annoyed with his blog posts and interviews and narratives and missives and everything that he's doing because...
Does any other normal prisoner get unrestricted internet access like this?
Well, he's not. It's house arrest, technically. He's out on bail, $250 million.
Right. That his parents put up, right?
Yeah. So it's sort of an interesting situation. I, for one, hope that he just continues to do the informative YouTube videos on things like the antique Sunbeam toaster. Oh, wait, those are different people.
I feel like his lawyer has to be crying, though, right? If he's constantly blogging and giving interviews, and it's like, please stop building a case against yourself.
I don't know. I mean, I don't
You
know.
usually don't want to talk to the press when you're currently being investigated.
Yeah, it's frowned upon. It's definitely
Yeah.
frowned upon. So they may take away his
A
internet
criminal
access.
tip: listen to your lawyer.
Yeah, pretty much. And also, there's this.
The FBI's most controversial surveillance tool is under threat. Oh, I'm crying a river of tears over here.
This is the FBI's access to the foreign intelligence surveillance, which a lot of the time also sweeps up data on Americans.
Yeah, so I guess this was implemented in 2008. So if it's like outgoing traffic or ingoing traffic, I think from like a foreign country, that's not protected because it's not an American citizen who's apparently speaking.
Well, it's not an American citizen that owns the infrastructure.
Right.
But if you have two American citizens talking to each other and you can route that conversation to a
Through
server.
like Europe, yeah.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, oh, that's international. I was like, but there's two people in Alabama talking to each other. Yes, through a server in London.
Right.
And it's
definitely very sketchy. So this just got renewed for 1 year, I think, like last month.
Yeah.
But they'll decide the fate of it, I think, at the end of this year.
Yeah, so it's 702 notably was used to authorize the wiretap itself, blah, 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 December 31st, 2023. It's reauthorized until December 31st, 2023. Congress must vote by year's end to extend the authority further. Spoiler alert, they will.
Yeah.
This piece exists only so that people like us will say, hey, maybe somebody's fighting the good fight, but ultimately there will be no change. Because no one sees this for how dangerous it is until it's too late.
This very article, though, mentions like there have been instances where they'll look up like some obscure political party and then it's like, oh, look, they routed through this thing, so now we can look at all their communications or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, and no one is sounding the alarm except.
I'm like, this is probably not good.
It's probably weird if Level 1 Techs is the only people that are sounding the alarm.
Well, I mean, there's an article in media that someone else wrote, so someone else is sounding the alarm, but whether they're being listened to.
It's really just a tar pit to trap us, to not actually change anything. Speaking of tar pits.
This is hilarious. The Army officer email chain that caused pandemonium.
So this went out to thousands of people, and it was like, please unsubscribe me, which also went out to thousands of people.
Yeah.
And then people in all caps saying, I don't appreciate this.
This was a lot of reply alls.
Yeah, losing their mind. So it's like.
There was a series of memes, too. There was one, my favorite one that I saw when I was reading this article was one guy being like, I'm not even in the Army anymore. I just have this email account, and it's spamming me all day.
Spoiler alert, when that happens to you, maybe don't be part of the problem. And hit reply all, or even reply. You don't know what's going to happen.
Or just mute the thread, like if it's bothering you that much.
Well, most people don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
So you can just, it's like, hey, don't do anything, and the problem will go away. Some people understand that. Some people don't. Had that happen a few times on the W3C mailing list, and it was shocking how many people didn't realize, just stop.
Right. I can see that like the first one or two people being like, hey, this is responding to everybody, and it's like, oh, there's an error. And then you just don't reply because someone's probably going to fix it at that point. But
yeah,
repeatedly responding to it, that's our top brass.
Yeah. And they've been busy, what with the balloons and all.
Yeah. U.S. sanctions 6 Chinese tech companies for supporting spy balloon programs.
So we can recover some of the wreckage, and it's like, all right, who made this stuff? It's like, how did they get that? And then there have been some investigations.
Yeah.
CNBC has an article about that, but yeah, fun times.
I think one of them was an American company as well.
Yeah,
that had sold them parts.
The firms will join a growing list of companies based in China that the U.S. says pose a serious threat to national security.
China also immediately sanctioned Lockheed Martin, I think, and a couple others. And I was like, were they not already sanctioned? I was kind of surprised that China wasn't already kind of angry at them. But
well, it turns out American businesses like to sell things to anybody who has money. That's capitalism. And we'll have some funny stories later about how some of the balloons they shot down, definitely not spy balloons. Probably not even international.
RIP.
Yeah. And in other news, similar to the whole going online ID card.
Senator Josh Hawley wants to create a legal age to be allowed on social media.
Okay.
Again, how do you... Not a bad idea in theory. How do you actually implement it without also limiting everybody's freedoms?
You have to have a credit card in order to have...
Yeah. But what if you have bad credit and then you can't get online to submit applications for stuff? Or?
I definitely think 13-year-olds are not entitled to free speech. That's what Ryan would say.
Wow. Oh, there you go. Yeah, you got to get your Ryan thing in.
It kind of makes sense. I mean, if you... I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Kids are terrible, and kids using social media to amplify the terribleness. And this is a way to do an end run around that. Okay, maybe. But again, better parenting.
Yeah, kids will find a way. You know, again, I just mentioned like they'll steal their parents' ID if they think that that will let them get their own account.
I worry that a lot of the time when, not a parent, don't know, but I worry
The best
that
parents are people who don't have children.
I worry that a lot of the time when we look at stuff like this, we've lost the ability to say, Timmy, this is a bad behavior and you shouldn't do this.
Right. I mean, but there's also like the whole thing where social media companies have designed everything about their app to be so addictive. Obviously, the solution is not to let your kid on in the first place, but like if they're already on there, they've already got that kind of weird feedback loop going.
I'm not, at the same time, I'm not sure if it's going to be great having, ChatGPT coach our teenagers. It's like, now, Timmy, if you post this, it's going to make Bobby feel bad. Are you sure that you want to post this? And it's like, because ChatGPT is analyzing literally everything. That's where we're going, because parents aren't doing that. I don't think that's better than just having a parent do that, or having a parent, sort of look. It's like kids can have privacy, but they sort of need
Guidance, especially at a young age.
Training.
Yeah.
Learning. Our giant sponge brains were made for absorbing information, and you have to. That doesn't mean that you can, have your kids absorb that information as if by osmosis. You're going to have to teach them and train them. Think about how horrible Tay was by default. It's because it didn't have sufficient training, just like your children.
This is your child on a fire hose of internet access.
Speaking of fire hoses,
SEC Commissioner Pierce publicly rebukes her agency, Gensler, on crypto regulation.
so Pierce is sort of pro-crypto, and Gensler is sort of anti-crypto, and this is definitely one of those never let a crisis go to waste. And so the SEC is trying to clamp down on all things crypto and transfers and the whole FTX thing, and they are leveraging it pretty effectively. Oh, this is
Yeah,
a
this
bad
should have been.
sort.
Yeah, that's all right.
That's fine.
I mean, we kind of mentioned that 7 states pushed to require ID for watching adult activities online.
Woo! Yeah, this is again. We covered the conversation for that. It was just in the wrong spot, so it's fine.
This one, it gets weirder. White House tells governors thousands of objects in the skies aren't aliens. Some of them could be used car lot balloons.
We have collectively lost our minds.
So the first balloon was in fact a Chinese spy balloon.
As was the second one.
The panic has ensued though, because as I think people started to see other balloons in the air and then, probably raised the tizzy online. And then it was like, well, crap, now we got to shoot them down or they'll think we're not doing anything. So it's just theater.
More importantly, at least one of the Pico balloons that was shot down, the amateur radio, not a very large balloon. I think that one was the one that was described as being the size of a sedan, but...
Didn't they miss it the first time too? Because it's this small.
Yeah, it's probably actually more like the size of a smart car. Maybe smaller.
One of those cars that when you're like driving and you're like, ooh, look, a free parking spot, but not really because it's just that one little tiny car.
And I realize a weather balloon inflates to a larger size once it gets higher, but these are not they, at least the one that the school launched. So
yeah,
I'm not sure. But also another not fabulous
we didn't
sort.
sort really this week, so it's fine.
I might have thought these were already sorted, but it's fine. They're kind of sorted.
They're sort of sorted. They're sorted
regionally,
by region.
but not by topic.
11 states consider right to repair for farming equipment.
So 11 states are looking at the DOJ thing, and it's like, yeah, these arguments from John Deere don't make any sense. On what sort of crazy moon would this even... it's the wheat thresher is going to get a thirst for the blood of children?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense.
And again, food security is national security. Don't make it harder for farmers to do their jobs.
Yeah, you've done your job poorly when the farmers are just so angry that they're spitting blood. It makes sense. Who else is so angry they're spitting blood?
House Republicans subpoena Apple, Facebook, and Google over content moderation.
Again, this is the thin end of the wedge. If they can find anything in the content moderation to say, look, they're manipulating speech, when it could be, they probably, Ryan would say they definitely are.
Right.
But it's probably algorithmic and not deliberate. But at the same time...
There are probably instances where it's deliberate and other instances where it's algorithmic, but then finding that percentage of each side is probably nearly impossible.
See also our program.
Yeah, or we have small scale example of this with like our forum, where it's really difficult sometimes to moderate. Like,
Yeah.
is this over the line? Is it not? And
Yeah, we can confirm there is a negative connotation to the algorithm for the word news,
yeah,
which is interesting.
even you saying that,
Yeah.
we may have been demonetized even as we speak.
It is unsettling. We can't talk about these things, or we can't
Use certain words without it.
and we do it in such an innocent way. I don't understand. You know who's not innocent?
Ugh, this story. Toronto police spending $337,000 on a podcast to avoid perception they're making propaganda. What a great word.
Spoiler alert, they are.
Also, so we're doing a podcast kind of thing right now. Obviously, there's a video component, but like, and we've acquired all this stuff over time, but like, it does not cost that much to put together a podcast setup. Also, if you thrift things like this table,
Was literally garbage.
yeah, like you don't have to have all brand new stuff either. So like, I don't know what the heck they invested in to spend that much money.
There are some podcasts that have much nicer stuff. They live in areas where the garbage in their areas is a lot nicer than.
When I was in college, we were adjacent to a larger city, and so like you went to the Goodwill in the larger city because you got better cast off items there.
I've noticed it's that way in California. Like
Yeah.
I went to, when I was in San Francisco, I went to one of their thrift stores, and it was like, holy moly, this place is nicer than our nice furniture stores.
Yeah, it's like, ooh, what are these people doing? Also, I'll never reach a point of success in my life where I can pass furniture on the side of the road without turning my head.
Well, our office furniture was literally thrifted from Lucent when they shut down and fired everybody.
Yeah.
They got rid of all their office furniture for pennies on the dollar. So if you used to work at Lucent in Texas, your office is here.
It's
literally.
all your stuff's come here. The rug in here that helps with some of the sound dampening, that's from my old apartment. All the props for the Christmas stuff was from my house. Like,
It's nice.
use trash.
You're Lucent away from Lucent.
You don't need to spend $300,000 on a podcast setup. You do have to spend some money on lights and mics.
Somebody spent an ungodly amount of money on this steel case furniture, but oh boy, it's nice.
Yeah.
It wasn't me.
German court rules police use of crime-fighting software is unlawful.
Yeah, it turns out the crime fighting software, Reuters. You could have said what it was. It's the and now that I've said that, I've forgotten what it was. I
got paywalled on this.
It's the one that we always complain about, the Israeli one, I think.
Oh, if you hadn't have mentioned that, I could have told you the name.
Yeah.
I can see their crappy logo.
It's the one that cracks into the iPhone and becomes horrible spyware on the iPhone. And
We can't find the name now. You'll have to read the article. We have in case you don't know, there's a one-tab link, and that one tab shows all of the links that we look at every week.
it's from the CIA-backed Palantir Technologies as well. It's automated data analysis to prevent crime in some German states. So you want to talk about an article that uses very soft language. That was the point I was trying to make before I derailed myself, is that prevent crime, pre-crime. That's sort of interesting.
Thought crime.
Yeah. And also the threshold for bugging your electronic device, because you won't notice, is much lower than doing anything more invasive because you do notice. And it clouds the argument to say that you tip off the bad guys to know that they're being surveilled. But there's something more insidious that happens when this happens universally. Unfortunately, the German court's kind of recognizing that. It's like, hey, wait a minute. It's not just that you're surveilling suspects. It's that it's so easy to be surveilled surreptitiously that when you do surveil someone surreptitiously and they're innocent, you sort of verify that, oops, that's not our due. You never say anything about it. Why? Because there would be outcry and court cases like this one. Yeah, people would be upset.
People don't like to be surveilled.
You'd be asked not to do that anymore. So if you're doing something that you will probably be asked not to do if a lot of people know about it until it's too late, you're probably part of the problem. How is this? Why does citizenry not understanding this is what's happening is a big problem? Yeah. And our technology should tell us. We should be able to trust. And if I could run the Apple operating system on non-Apple hardware, there would probably be enough gearheads that would tell me that and say, oh yes, by the way, the radio is on fire and running your battery down. And that is why it is doing what it is doing. It's pretty easy to spot that. It's like, oh, your phone has been surreptitiously you've got a warrant or whatever on your phone, and they're tracking everything. And it's like, well, that explains why the battery's down and the microphone's on all the time. Good job. Oh yeah, and then there's this.
EU lawmakers approve effective 2035 ban on new fossil fuel cars. I feel like this kind of legislation gets kicked around. Last date that I heard this kind of thing, they were all like, oh, 2025. And then they push it back another 10 years.
Yeah, I don't, there needs to be better battery technology for this to happen. And a lot of the time, this kind of legislation is very optimistic that the battery technology will get there, or having this kind of impetus will drive battery technology. And if it does, great, that's awesome. There really are a lot of parallels here, though, to phasing out like leaded gasoline, which still exists for aviation and still exists for cars, but doesn't exist to the extent for cars that it once did. So that's maybe good.
Right.
So maybe this will work out something similar. I don't know. Maybe we'll get some cheap electricity. That'll be amazing. Maybe some of the balloons will have something in it that inspires somebody to produce something with limitless free electricity. I don't know. We'll see.
That's so optimistic.
It's hopelessly optimistic.
Yeah. Australians able to opt out of targeted ads and erase their data under proposed privacy reforms.
Speaking of hopelessly optimistic.
This seems really good, and I'm not Australian, so I don't know. Is that actually, is this some sort of thing where they're trying to sneak some other thing in?
This is Australia modeling European regulations around data retention and regulation, a la the GDPR, but they're more directly stating what the GDPR tries to do, but is not very effective in practice. But also, if you're in the advertising industry in the EU or Australia, you should sit up and take note of this. You're going to have to approach advertising in a different way than you are now, because Australians are going to be able to opt out of targeted ads and erase their data.
You can't hoover up all their information and then target your ads toward them.
I mean, it was of dubious value anyway, but it was useful as a prop for communicating with your clients. It's like, look, line go up based on these metrics in the work that we're doing. It's like, good job, agency. Here, have some more money. It's there's the quote from the guy where he's like, I know that the agency is wasting half of the money that I give them, but I don't know which half.
Yeah.
This is the same exact thing. But
if you're Australian, is this hiding something else? It seems good on the surface.
It seems good, but it'll never actually be implemented this way. Plus, they've already got a pretty complete profile on you. So it's
but not that coveted super young demographic. Got to get them early.
Yeah, and that group is so disorganized and bad at hiding their information online. Bad with their tech literacy, as we'll see later. That I don't know what to make of it. Speaking of, I don't know.
I'm not sure how to feel about this. Japan formally adopts policy of using nuclear reactors beyond 60 years. On one hand, maybe slightly better energy for a longer period of time, which makes them less expensive to keep up. But at the same time, it's like, what if there's a horrible flaw in the reactor design from 60 years ago? And it's like, well, we don't really want to decommission it right now because we haven't hit the max limit yet.
We really need to be building, it would solve everybody's problems. Sorry, people in Africa. If we built the new reactor designs in Africa, that way, if something went catastrophically wrong,
that's terrible.
It's in Africa.
Was that a Ryan comment? Yeah.
But because it was in Africa, but also we could test the new designs and then build them here.
Maybe we should test them on the moon. Ooh, someone should get Elon Musk super into nuclear reactors and he can build them on the Mars.
We'll accidentally discover a reactor flaw that only affects the reactor when it's built on Earth gravity and not moon gravity.
Yeah.
That's fun. Ryan included this story, but this seems just like a Me Too.
Beijing to support key firms in building ChatGPT-like AI. They're all racing toward it now, right? Google's also doing the same thing.
Yeah, but see, I don't understand. Like Google, with their core mission, as good as it is for search and inventing MapReduce, just seems like they want on the hype train. And
right. They want investor capital.
Well, because the average consumer expects ChatGPT to change their life for interactivity, Google is saying, oh yeah, we need to do that. They already had Lambda, but they're not releasing Lambda. They're not releasing other products. Google's gotten... Somebody that I follow likened Google to IBM at one of IBM's peaks in the 80s and 90s. Like IBM was doing some really amazing stuff, but they were so scared to death of legal implications and so scared to death of litigation that they were just kind of paralyzed. Meanwhile, Google sort of maintained their startup phase for a very long time, and they did a lot of innovation and they moved fast and they broke a lot of things. But now Google's kind of in their IBM phase and they're just scared to death. And they don't, there's legal implications and they don't want to be blamed. And eventually the Google AI algorithm is going to recommend, that somebody read Mein Kampf. And then all of a sudden, everything comes down crashing around them. Look how insane the restrictions are around just the algorithm on this platform. And look at the heck that channels like Forgotten Weapons have had to go through. We're very meta on this program. There's a lot of fun undertones if you're paying attention to all the different levels of things. Speaking of all the different levels of things.
Breaking. Subsea cable wars heat up as China nixes crucial project. They're not going to invest in more undersea cable.
Dun, 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 dun,
There's a
dun.
cool map on here. I was like, wow, that would be an impressive project. Look at that.
They had a 20% stake, but I don't think it's going to be much of a problem for the other partners to make that up or to seek another partner. So this cable, you could break off of this cable and connect everything to everything else. But this would be a very low latency communication platform, which is awesome. So yeah, but China's pulled out. Like,
in some ways, is that necessarily a bad thing if they had their own communication? Like everyone else had their own communication channel that China wasn't involved in.
Yeah, maybe.
As things get weirder.
And as things get weirder, those green lasers, the green lasers surveying stuff off the coast of Hawaii, and then the green lasers here.
Philippines says China ship used laser against the Coast Guard. They blinded temporarily several people on the ship.
Yeah.
Who this was used against.
So, but is this some sort of sensor? Was this a PSYOP? Was this a rangefinder? You can use lasers for a lot of different things. You can figure out if nuclear reactions are happening by looking at stuff that happens to the photons that have bounced back in a laser off of the side of something, which is interesting. So
this is there was another one in Hawaii, right? This was a few weeks ago. I remember reading a headline that was like, green lasers spotted in Hawaii. You
could do that for topology mapping. You could also do that for sensors for different kinds of things going on. You can look at a spectrograph to figure out what sorts of things are a lot of interesting stuff. Mm-hmm. Speaking of which,
founder of WallStreetBets, the subreddit, which helped ignite meme stock frenzy, sues Reddit.
Okay. And this is because of algorithmic manipulation or deliberate manipulation, accusing it of wrongly banning him from moderation in the community and undermining his trademark rights. It'll be interesting to follow this case and get discovery out of it. I'd say that this case will go one of two ways. He will fail spectacularly, or the case goes away because Reddit doesn't want to give up, Reddit corporate doesn't want to give up how much they manipulated stuff, which will come out in discovery. So we'll see. It's like, does Reddit want discovery of, behind the curtain? How badly don't they want discovery from behind the curtain? If it's pretty egregiously bad, then this case will probably go away pretty quickly because they'll settle and it'll be all confidential. Mm. So
I didn't think about it that way, where they wouldn't want people to know how it actually works.
Yeah. So, and probably also some investment companies were like leaning on Reddit to make WallStreetBets go away, because now pretty much everybody knows that when you're shorting stock, none of that actually really exists, which is technically a securities violation, but sure looks like fraud to me on the outside, being an amateur. It's like, I don't understand how this works, and it sure looks like fraud.
Is this just fraud with extra steps?
Yeah. So I don't know. But even at a low level, as the economic collapse starts to happen and there's, a crunch and advertisers are pulling out, a lot of YouTube channels have commented. It's like, hey, our advertisers have pulled out. Never a better time to join Patreon and Floatplane if you're in a financial position. If you're a 1%er that is in the position to join.
Yeah, if you're in a position to do so. Or if you just want to do a little one-time thing, store.level1text.com.
But that also sort of signals the direness of the economic situations when you have advertisers pulling out, whether it's Unilever or your friendly neighborhood YouTube or Twitch channel.
Twitch allegedly boosting its own channel with junk views. So they have their own channel, and
No one cares.
yeah, they play like sponsored games from what I understood, like Candy Crush. And normally the Candy Crush category, it said, had 1 to 2 viewers. Sometimes like no one watches it. But then theirs would have thousands. And it's like, are those real? And someone ran the numbers in terms of like chat engagement, and they were like a tiny percentage of people actually engaged with that in any meaningful way in the chat. So it's probably mostly ViewBot. Advertisers? Amazon lying about viewing numbers? Never.
That's a Lord of the Rings, Rings to Power.
They definitely didn't autoplay the series on the Amazon homepage to boost views. They would never do that.
Speaking of such things,
Microsoft ditches Yammer brand and goes all in on Viva Engage. I had never heard of either of these, but apparently they had too much overlap.
Yeah.
In terms of what they did.
Yeah. And also Teams and email and that kind of thing. I can't wait for Microsoft, somebody inside Microsoft, to decide that email is now obsolete, and the way we will communicate with each other is by creating Word docs and SharePoint. I mean, you could do it, but it would be awful.
It would be not... Well, the other day, Teams, once again, being the bane of my existence, someone in our office was like, hey, can you send me this documentation for something? And I was like, oh yeah, I'll send you that document. I tried to send it in Teams because that's where she asked me for it. And it was just like, no, I'm not going to upload that Word doc. So I had to send it through email because Teams decided it wasn't going to attach anything right now.
And it's a good thing you send it through email, because in 3 months from now, when they're like, I didn't get that, you go to your email and you look for it, and
it'll be there. Yeah.
It's like, that's weird.
Well, it was someone internal. So
well, no, I mean, if you had sent it, it's like you go and you look in your email because you remember sending it, but you don't remember how. And you look in your email, it's like, no, I guess I hallucinated that. Fun times. And remember the video about the viral videos about dudes licking sushi and then putting it back on the sushi conveyor belt? That's why we can't have nice things.
Japan sushi chains rush to ensure food safety after viral stunts. This whole website would not load for me this week.
This is amazing. I had no idea. I should have invented a little RFID sticker with one of those button cell batteries, so that if you pick up a plate and then you put it back down on the conveyor belt, it's like one of those anti-theft alarms, like the so you have to pick it, and then when you don't set it on the conveyor belt and you just set it on your table, that's fine. But if you put the plate back on the conveyor belt after just lifting it off,
I think that's the whole thing though in these restaurants. It's like you put your empty plate back on the belt and then someone picks it up and cleans it.
No, I think that the people will have to come around and get the empty plates, because otherwise the alarm's going off.
Then we have to hire people, spend money on staff. No.
Yeah. Sorry. It's still marginally less expensive than my inexpensive RFID tags, so that do a thing. Anyway, speaking of things that did not go according to plan.
The Mastodon bump is now a slump. So, I don't know anybody who's stuck with Mastodon, but I don't spend a lot of time on social, so
people left Twitter, and I don't know, Jason Scott, the internet archivist, predicted that Twitter would be for sale or on the auction block by May. It'll be interesting to see.
That'd be interesting. Yeah, that's a bold prediction, but I'm interested to see if
he's
it
been
pans
right.
out.
He called Stadia within months. Like he bought, I think it was like Stadia Countdown, and it was a countdown to when they were going to cancel Stadia, and it was shockingly accurate.
That would be interesting.
It's like, this is not going to work, and Google is not going to support it when it's not working, and so it's only going to live this long. And he was right. He might have seen a thing or two.
I mean, Twitter, they've kind of been going down the toilet, like spiraling for a little while. They're not paying for their offices. Like, they have lawsuits out the ears.
Advertisers are already skittish for
any social media content.
Well, no, I mean just anything because of the economic conditions.
Oh, yeah.
To say nothing of a controversial figure.
I wonder if Musk's pride will allow him to sell it that soon, or if he'll keep trying for a little longer.
And, you know, come to think of it, there's a couple of web properties that I have to deal with. There's 3 that I can think of off the top of my head that get a substantial amount of traffic, paid and otherwise, from Twitter. And the quality of that traffic has declined precipitously over the last 3 or 4 months.
Didn't they mess up their API or something too?
Yeah.
And everyone was really upset about that.
Yeah, so it seems like a mess. You know what else is a mess?
Oh, why Wikipedia is so tough on Bigfoot. This is kind of a fun story. I just included it for funsies.
Bigfoot is, okay, it makes sense because Wikipedia, remember when we were in college, it was don't use Wikipedia as a source.
Because anyone can edit it.
Yeah. And so they're still a little sensitive to that. And so talking about things like Bigfoot, they don't want to do it because somebody could pull up a cryptozoology Bigfoot article and say, see, this is why you don't want to listen.
Yeah, they said the reason that they struggle with moderating that page is because a lot of the sources that get posted are kind of dubious. So like I went to the Wikipedia article page after I read this article, and there's a lot of claims where it's like, this is dubious. Here's what people say. Here's what mainstream science thinks. But
is it possible?
I want to believe.
Like, engagement challenge, is Wikipedia better than Britannica at this point? And if you're in Britannica,
what about Microsoft and Carta? Where does that factor into the conversation?
I mean, at one point, Britannica was so insane that you could have a door-to-door, you could earn a living as a door-to-door encyclopedia salesman selling Britannica. And now,
I don't.
no,
Yeah.
and now it's just Wikipedia. How do you?
I like Wikipedia.
Oh no, Wikipedia.
Even if they don't believe in Bigfoot, I believe in Wikipedia.
Wikipedia killed encyclopedias.
Oh.
You know what's killing online shopping though?
Instagram is killing live shopping in March. Will focus on ads instead. So they added a feature where I don't have Instagram, but like if you saw a product in someone's video, you could click on it and buy it instantly. And I guess that's not actually working out as well as they thought. People don't shop that way, at least not in the US. In China, apparently that's very common.
Yeah, I think this must be a convenience problem because it's a good idea.
Yeah.
And obviously the people that are really engaged with Instagram, like Instagram influencers, are making money because they're doing their own brand deals.
Right.
And so it seems weird that Meta would walk away from that and not just try to do it better. So I have a feeling we'll see this in some other form in 6 months or a year once they figure it out.
Yeah. Maybe, I don't know. I wonder why that's so different though. Maybe too, the article suggested it was because of pandemic shopping habits where like everyone was shopping online for a while. And then as things reopened, they went back to shopping in person. But
yeah. Well, as we've been working on stuff here in the Level 1 studio and stuff, I've been looking for, like, our camera there has a quick release plate on it, but it's kind of fiddly and it's a little bit of a pain. And
that's true of every one I've ever used.
And it's a ball head. And so I've been trying different ones over the last 6 months because if I can find a good one, I want to put the same thing on all of the places where we have a camera to make it easy to move cameras between different places. And so I could see an Instagram influencer. It's like, here is like a legit camera quick release plate where the lever will clear the slide plate for a fluid head and it'll work on a ball head and it'll do this and that and the other. And like the Arca plates come close and the clones of like the Arca plates come close. But ultimately there's some catastrophic problem with it. Like the lever interferes with the battery door on the camera, or the lever comes off the wrong side, or the lever gets bound up when you use it on a plate for a quick release head because it doesn't have a millimeter of clearance or whatever. And so I could see it if there's an influencer that's like, hey, check out this amazing thing that I found. Here's my Amazon affiliate link, that they would get, thousands or tens of thousands of dollars in commissions of sales of that, showing something that solves a very specific problem. Because a lot of the time people don't, like, you can't, like, if you look at pictures of those things, they never show it installed on anything. And this is just a fundamental problem with understanding products. But also sometimes people buying the products, like the long tail of that kind of stuff is that no one really documents how that product is going to be used, except for a few crazy people.
You want that use case information. That's what I want about everything that I ever buy. I'm like, what's your use case for this?
And so I could see that for those people, Instagram will always be profitable, but there's not really a way for Meta to insert itself into that commercial transaction without running afoul of, interstate commerce laws, probably. So I could see that this is probably, I think it actually is a much easier problem to solve, but I think that Meta and other companies like that are not thinking about it in those terms. Plus also most of the products for that kind of stuff is garbage. Even like the $80, like the 3-legged thing, quick release Arca plate thing, they don't consider these kinds of things. They machine 1 millimeter off the bottom of the slide for that, but they don't for the lever. So obviously, even those kind of companies are not putting that much thought into it. And so when you do that kind of a deep dive, like super ASPE analysis of a couple of blocks of aluminum, and it's like, even though it's $80, they still didn't consider the little details for that kind of thing. It's like, okay. Yeah.
I recently watched a video from a guy. I watch his vlogs almost every day. He did a series of tests for a mic. So him and his friends do like outdoor hiking videos. So they have a very specific use case for what they need in a mic. And he went through and did all these tests for like 4 or 5 different mics. And at the end of all of it, he's like, I like the mic I had originally the best. I was like, oh yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, yeah. The microphones that we have for like not these broadcast microphones, but the microphones that we have, that I like the best is the clone of the Sheps mic. We remember we spent thousands of dollars on the Sheps mics.
We've tested a lot of mics over the last like 6 or 7 years.
And those Sheps mics were amazing. I sent all of them back but one, and then I built clones of them using mic parts from micparts.com and stuff I got on eBay. And I love those microphones. They're amazing. So, you know what else is, a thing that is the last story that I forgot?
Meta found a leaker who shared details about its unannounced VR headsets with a YouTuber.
That's where I was going with that, with the whole influencer sharing products, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, oh, yes,
We kind of get off the rails too soon a lot in this program.
This looks like an ad campaign, though. I mean, Meta says they found the leaker who shared the details about his unannounced VR headset with a YouTuber, but this is how you would do it in the modern era if you wanted to gauge interest on a product and do that kind of thing.
Didn't Google get caught doing this a few years ago with one of theirs?
The Pixel, the deliberately left behind Pixels.
At
Like,
the bar,
I found it in a bar. We see you, ad agency. We know your game. We know what you're up to. That's what this feels like. This feels exactly like that.
I think they mentioned too in this article, this guy wasn't fired. Maybe I misread that, but they're like, usually if someone gets like a leaker is found and it's a legitimate leak, the person will be fired publicly, so that it makes like a lesson of them.
Yeah, and on Apple would do that and probably also sue them because Apple. But that's not what happened here. So I have a feeling this was just to gauge interest. Maybe, some shareholders over Mark Zuckerberg were like, hey, let's see if this is legit. And then when there was a negative reaction, it's like, okay, we need to find a way to get Mark out because he's just running the company into the ground. Something like that. I don't know. Yeah, there's a deeper game being played here, and I'm not sure what it is.
Probably just advertising. Just line go up.
All right. Even without Ryan, we managed to make it to 51 minutes.
Hell yeah.
So next up, we've got business and then algorithm. Next up, we've got business and then...
Was it security?
Security, I think, yeah.
Okay.
And then we got 2 different... We got SADs and non-SADs, nonsense.
I liked that subcategorization this week.
We're gonna try to put more non-SADs nonsense so we can laugh and be happy and go out on a happy note.
I also try to find happy stories for the main news, but unfortunately for tech stuff, there's not always a lot of happy news.
We need happiness, but there needs to be more happiness in the world. It's cool. We can all commiserate about the non-happiness together, though, and that maybe perhaps is a derivative of unhappiness that produces happiness. So there you go.
Anyway, we'll see you guys not next week, but next time. Bye! Hello, welcome back to the L1 show. Today we are doing business and security stories to share with your friends.
There was so much business last week. It was crazy.
Yeah, well, it's mostly, as usual, kind of bad news. This one's not too bad.
Well, it collapsed. I mean, economic turmoil and people losing their jobs. There's a lot more people entering the workforce.
We're not at the start of the tab list. That's why I was confused.
Oh,
the start of the tab list is almost always everybody losing their jobs.
I've misclicked. Yeah. But it's sort of nuts.
Amazon is taking half of each sale from its merchants. This is not surprising.
That seems like an antitrust thing. That seems like maybe what the European Union is complaining about.
I've had some clients who sell through Amazon and they're like, whenever we can we not promote our Amazon because they take all our money?
Yeah, they we thought about selling like the Level 1 KVMs and other stuff like that on Amazon, and we don't make enough money on the KVMs to do that. And even as expensive as they are,
right,
most of the money goes into making it not suck.
Yeah, research and development, if you will.
The research and development is just because I'm sort of obsessive about those things. I don't have a choice.
I can't stop myself.
The gray beard is involuntary, but really aren't those the best products?
Oh, Twilio to lay off about 1,500 employees or 17% of its workforce.
Yeah, it's about 10% across the board. It seems to be like a self-fulfilling cycle. It's like all the CEOs are looking around and saying, everybody's laying off 10%. We got to lay off 10%. So
But sir, these people actually make the product. No, lay them off.
1,500 employees. It's okay. Sounds good. There's a lot of tech companies that are in the same position. I mean,
I do wonder if it's a little bit of like monkey see, monkey do. Everyone gets a little nervous, but
it really is. And it's the same thing with pricing and profits. Because remember, it's like eggs are at record price, but profits are also at a record high. But it's a little bit of sort of a preemptive, if you know that somebody is going to punch you in the face, do you wince? And in business markets, they will wince at the drop of a hat. Because if you wince and nothing actually happens, that's actually a good thing. You come out way more ahead than you would have had, something
if you just
happen.
took a punch to the face, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, speaking of punches to the face,
PC CPU shipments see steepest decline in 30 years.
this may be the worst declines in x86 CPU history.
Not great.
Preemptive wincing, yes, definitely. And also,
Microsoft lays off 150 cloud sales specialists, report.
when line goes down, you don't need salespeople.
Yeah, a lot of the sales teams were getting cut for a lot of these. I think, the next one, I think, is Microsoft's LinkedIn lays off staff amid hiring slowdown. And the staff they laid off, I think, was like recruiting kind of people.
Yeah. So it's weird, though, because sometimes in economic downturn, you see companies looking to cut costs. And that was a big thing that drove cloud expansion in 2007, 2008, 2009, because Amazon compute services and Google compute were often cheaper. And now it's sort of a given that they can be less expensive, but in some scenarios, on-premises server stuff is cheaper, as long as you don't need a super amazing internet connection. So it's weird. But also,
DocuSign to lay off 10% of its workforce, about 700 employees.
now this is interesting because DocuSign, if you look at their quarterlies and their performance and their earnings and stuff, that's sort of the tack that this article takes, which is a little different than the other ones, is the DocuSign's actually, their volume is up and their margins are up. They found more ways to do more automation. And so there's less people doing more work for less money. And so they let a bunch of people go. But it's not even that it's preemptive, it's that it's more automated. So they're not even responding to a punch in the face. They're just saying, hey, we've realized all these gains for automation over the years. Now is the opportunity to lay off those people that we didn't need anyway with no negative side effect. And we can just point to the economy and say, economy.
It's the economy.
So, I don't know. It's
not good for workers. We'll say that.
It's bad that we have a system where when there is a legitimate pressure economically, that it also encourages other companies to pile on.
Yeah.
That seems like that would create undue stress in an already stressed economic situation. If DocuSign didn't feel like they could get rid of those workers before now, that is a worse situation than getting rid of them now, in my opinion. Or they should have gotten rid of them when they didn't need them, not when they had an excuse to.
Right.
Is what I mean. Because it could encourage a more of a collapse type situation. So
Feedback loop.
yeah. And so and then there's also this.
Tesla fired dozens of Gigafactory workers after Tuesday's union announcement.
Oh, you're unionizing, huh? Get out.
Yeah. And it was literally, I think, almost everyone in that group. It was like 20 people, and they were all people involved with starting up a union.
They can't fire us all.
They did. Someone will probably have a nice lawsuit from that.
And
This one, most Londoners would quit before they give up working from home. I understand that. It's nice not having to do a commute.
go on, spill the contents of that imaginary angry resignation email. It'll do you good.
My favorite thing I've ever seen, I don't know if anyone's actually ever done this, but someone said that they got like a condolences card, like sorry for your loss, and they did that as a resignation.
And sorry for loss of me.
Yeah, it was funny.
Oh, this one, it's I don't think this is a good idea.
Okay, well, let's discuss. HEDA offers UK residents free hot water in exchange for cooling its servers. I don't know why I tried to do an accent. Sorry.
So what this does is this straps a server to your hot water heater, and it uses your hot water tank for cooling.
Would that be enough cooling?
I mean, the amount of compute that the server has would be variable over time. Surely they've done the math, and surely that they've worked that out. But perhaps I should register a HEDA company shutdown countdown.com or something like that, because I can't see this lasting more than a year or two.
Is this just looking for investors?
Yeah, well, it sounds like in the UK, a lot of people use natural gas for their hot water heater. And so they'll come and install it, and they basically cut away part of your hot water heater, but they do it in such a way that it doesn't void the tank warranty. And then they strap the server to the inner tank on your hot water heater and use that for cooling. So when you run your hot water heater, it's going to bring in cold water from the outside, but also the giant tank of water acts kind of like a heat sink. And so it'll help keep the server cool. And so by having one server in everybody's house, they're able to distribute their data center or their workload across all of these houses. Of course, if you have a house that runs their hot water heater more, then they'll have a server that has a higher cooling capacity. And so maybe their software can leverage that somehow, or maybe they just assume that it's sort of a fixed, low amount that they'll be able to do this, that, or the other. I think that ultimately, though, this is probably going to rely on the houses. Like, you're going to end up dumping some waste heat into the house that air conditioning or other climate controls may have to deal with. Or maybe this is a part of the UK where it's cold and it'll offset some of the air conditioning stuff. But I wouldn't think so, because if it's in a colder part of the UK that these houses are, then they could just use the outside for cooling, and the costs for cooling really wouldn't be significant. So just the basic physics of this, I can't get the numbers to line up.
Also, like, if you're depending on each individual household, what happens if, like, they don't pay their electric bill? Or, oops, like, they were working on a different part of the house. They were doing a renovation in the bathroom upstairs, and the water leaked through. And
well, it does say that they give you a credit on the electricity that the server uses, and they pay 10% above the market rates. So they pay you for your electricity and reimburse you for your electricity. But I can't imagine you would run a data center this way. This would maybe be useful for bulk compute. Maybe with the gains of cryptocurrency, this would make sense. But with that being what it is, then it's not going to work. I'm glad we closed the door.
yeah, you guys probably can't hear our editors are laughing in the other room. How dare they have fun? Tesla to open U.S. charging network to rivals in $7.5 billion federal program.
Level 1 called it. We said, hey, Tesla's going to see an opportunity to get some federal money. That's why they're being so ornery with their charging network. And sure enough.
Surely, though, there would have reached a point where they couldn't have done that forever without some regulatory agency being like, you can't keep this so only certain people can use it.
Yeah, I love the websites that do the math and say that Tesla can't exist without all of the subsidies that it has, whether they be government subsidies and direct government subsidies or carbon credit subsidies. Engagement challenge, how is that wrong? Because somebody would love to tell us how that's wrong. But in this case, it's the old Elon Musk pattern where he has a tantrum on Twitter and says something about, oh, this is, we're losing money here, blah, blah, blah. This isn't really good. And he really amps it up. And then something like this happens. And it's like, oh, that's why he was doing that. That's why he was stamping his feet. It's because he wanted access to this. He didn't really care. They were going to do it. They were going to open up the charger network one way or the other, because you can always just charge people money. That's fine. But now it gets federal money and to charge people money. It's the best of both worlds. It's not the best of both worlds.
Bloomberg, Apple delays AR/VR headset launch again and now expects to unveil the device at WWDC.
So they keep delaying it, and I don't know what that means.
I wonder, is it good, or is it just like, oh, this is not up to Apple's standard?
It's probably not fabulous.
Still kind of salty about the whole Apple Pencil situation with the latest iPad. I had to explain that to a friend who was like, I want to get my wife an iPad because she wants to draw on it. And I was like, well, you should get the newest one, but the Pencil is like that weird charging situation.
Yeah, the next newest one will be the reason to upgrade. It's like, oh man, that pencil situation was just awful. So there'll be a flood of stuff on the market that's the old one.
Yeah, that's what happened the first time when the Apple Pencil 2 came out because it has a better charging thing, but now it doesn't work. It's like,
That's the Apple MO. They do it. They do that. You can pretty much count on Apple to do one thing, and it's that over and over again. But you know who else you can count on to do that one thing over and over again?
ASML says ex-China employee misappropriated data relating to its critical chip technology. Blech.
But ASML also said that the employee didn't really get any important trade secrets. So this just seems like a headline to be like, yeah, they took something they shouldn't have. Yeah. Remember the it's like somebody flees, ex-Tesla employee is trying to leave the country with secrets in it. And it turns out it was not really anything.
They were just going on vacation and they didn't like it, probably.
It was a little more serious than that. But it wasn't fabulous. But this is fabulous.
Google Fiber launches 5
gigabit.
5 gigabit service for $125 per month.
Well, that's about, gigabit is feeling a little slow. 5 gigabit, that would go a lot farther. So $125 a month for 5 gigabit. That's
Where all
nice.
is Google Fiber even launched? Like, it's nowhere near me.
Kansas City, Louisville. Although Louisville's a little weird because AT&T did succeed in
Hampering them.
really just kneecapping the bejesus out of them. It's really sort of criminal. Where's Lena Khan when you need her? Louisville. Google. Come on.
She's busy. She's got to take on everybody all the time.
So she's a little late to that party too. That's the shenanigans there happened a while ago. Yeah. So that's sort of fun. So the whole, China situation and manufacturing, it's created a lot of hardships for companies that are trying to stop manufacturing in that region. Apple is, an early adopter. They sort of saw this coming a year ago. They've been working on getting things up and running for manufacturing and other places like the Philippines. But there's some challenges.
50% rejection rate for iPhone casings produced in India shows scale of Apple's challenge.
The representative from Apple was really quick to tell us that the rejection rate from the Chinese case manufacturing is like almost, but not quite 0%.
Institutional knowledge of years of manufacturing.
And just dealing with how picky they are. It's like, oh.
They know before. It's kind of like we have certain clients where it's
Yeah.
like, I know that they're going to nitpick this, so I'm just going to go on and try to preemptively fix it. But knowing probably won't be enough.
You know what's not a nitpick, though?
Ford halts production shipments of F-150 Lightning over possible battery issue. I cannot talk.
You know it's bad when they halted delivery and manufacture. It's like, battery issue. Oh. There's not really a lot of details, but Reuters is reporting on it. So this one will probably be a news story for several weeks to come.
Yeah, maybe one of those electric car websites. Sometimes we'll get stories. Maybe they'll have details about it soon.
Yeah.
Probably by the time you watch this.
And the cost of energy is going up and down, up and down, up and down. If you're in Texas, I am so sorry about the cost of energy.
Is it really high right now?
Yeah, the energy grid in Texas. There were people we had that minor freeze, and there were people in Texas and in Austin that didn't have power for like 4 days. And it wasn't even...
I thought they fixed the grid after the last freeze in 2021.
We made the grid capitalistic. It's good now. It's not. And here's another headline that says why.
Electric vehicles could match gasoline cars on price this year. I have messed up every title over the last 3 times.
And this is actually talking about the price of the vehicle. But when you dig into it, it's like, wait a minute. The price per mile is not really a lot different here either.
I mean, I would be interested in an electric vehicle, but they are, even at the prices they're talking about, they're still really high, I think.
Gas vehicles have also gone up in price dramatically.
Yeah.
See also used vehicles, where
Oh my gosh, yeah.
used vehicles have gone up so much that it doesn't, used vehicles often don't make sense anymore because people are so used to not being able to afford a new vehicle. And you could get, a used vehicle where used is, this vehicle is a year old, but only has 500 miles on it. So it's new, and it would be, $10,000 off or something. And so it's like, yeah, that's the one to buy. Or the one that the dealership used for the loaner vehicle, and you buy that one because it's, $10,000 off or whatever. Those days are gone, sadly.
Yeah, that's very sad. I really would like to get a truck, get rid of one of our old cars, but at the prices they're at now, it's not going to happen.
We and a couple of weeks ago we did a report on New York, and New York passed the right to repair legislation, but they managed to pass a version of the right to repair legislation that was terrible. And so Grist has the post-mortem on how that could possibly happen.
How big tech rewrote the nation's first cell phone repair law.
So it's like, oh, well,
Sadhorn.mp3.
if letting Louis Rossmann repair your iPhone will somehow result in it murdering your children, then you don't have to share that. And you don't have to demonstrate any kind of plausible reality. It's like, oh, well.
Of that actually happening,
Yeah, we just have to say it. It's like, well, if we let Louis Rossmann repair this cell phone, there's a chance that it could hunt down and kill Sarah Connor. I'm just saying. It's a small chance, but
Maybe
there's a chance.
He'll turn into a mutant when he opens up that cell phone case.
So that's, it's the John Deere argument. And the DOJ, if anybody is paying attention at the DOJ, the stuff that you said for John Deere, just copy paste that.
Yeah.
Send that memo to Tim Cook at Apple, because it's the same thing, except perhaps even more egregious, because I think that if we allow people to change light bulbs and electric sockets, where they could totally jam their finger in there and get a shock, then I think that we should allow them to change the batteries in their cell phones.
That's we talked about a few weeks ago. Like, I can just go into a Tractor Supply and buy animal vaccines. I don't know how to administer a vaccine, but I bought one and I read the instructions, did it for Rue. It was a nasal one, but still.
If you go to Ace Hardware and you say, hey, I've got a broken light bulb in a socket, what do I do about that? They say, well, try to turn the light off. And it's like, I don't remember how to turn it off. And it's like, go to your breaker panel and shut your power off. And then take a potato and shove the potato into the socket and unscrew your light bulb. If you are smart enough to do that, you can change a lithium-ion battery.
They could also just design their phones to make that even easier. They could dummy proof. Apple is the king of dummy proofing things, but they can't do it for that.
I'm not asking Apple to dummy proof anything. I'm just saying that if you can change
even as it is now,
a broken light bulb, you can change a lithium-ion battery. Fun times. We actually do have some real hardware news too, which is exciting. But first up,
this is just a slide.
yeah,
Pangolin.
the Pangolin AMD-powered laptop. Ryan included this one. This wasn't even me. I didn't even do this.
He did this. This is Wendell Bait.
Yeah.
Is that actually an H1 tag? Or is that an image?
This is an image.
Oh. There's no H1 tag.
Yeah, 9 to 5 Linux. We could probably turn.
Oh, there is at the top. I think we scrolled down a little bit. Never mind.
We could. It's now available to order. System 76's all new AMD powered laptop. I've decided that I'm going to get one of these and try it. And part of the reason is the spec list, and part of the reason is because there's a couple aspects of this build that remind me of the old Sony Z505. The Sony Z505 was the pinnacle of laptop design for the way that the battery was, the way that the keyboard was, the way that the screen was. It was a magnesium alloy case here. I'm kind of excited about the design. I'm also kind of excited about the performance and the battery life of the 6800U. Now, we do have some 7000 series AMD laptops coming. I don't normally review laptops, but there's also the AMD Advantage thing, and I've been really curious about that. And also, my laptop is 4 years old, and also I'm going to be doing traveling this year.
Back to traveling.
Some of it is fun for business. It's going to go to Computex, but some of it is
boring traveling.
Yeah, and so
not going to.
Yeah, not going to Computex. So first up, the Pangolin, worth the look. 6800U, and I'm also really impressed with the 6800U. So we got the Desk Mini. It's a desktop PC, but they shoved the laptop parts into a desktop computer, and it's nice. It's shockingly nice for portable stuff. And this thing has up to 10 hours of power.
Is it already out?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, you can order it now. So I'm gonna get one, and we're gonna see how it goes. Fun times. And then also, Intel announced Xeons. Intel's bringing back, they're coming after Threadripper. Intel hasn't had anything to answer for Threadripper on the high-end desktop, and Threadripper prices have shown that, Threadripper Pro, and here come the Xeon W3400 and W2400. Intel launches W3400 and W2400 processors for workstations up to 56 cores, 112 PCIe 5 lanes. So not just one, but two high-end desktop. One, I guess, is kind of an answer to Threadripper Pro. That's the W3400 series. And then there's also the W2400 series. I did a separate video on this. You should check it out. The W2400 series, I think, is more like the mainstream one. And the W3400 is just the ridiculous monster. Like, if you're going to spend $5,000 on a CPU on your workstation, 3400 series. Probably. I mean, like, if you're doing, Weta Digital or 3D commercials and just it's the most unbelievable fire-breathing creative workstation. I think AMD showed the world how hot those could be because they literally could not make Threadripper chips fast enough for people that wanted those 64-core chips. And actually talking to when we did an AMD event, and there were dudes there from studios that had worked on films you've heard of, and they said
Films you've heard of.
and
Big movies.
they were incredibly complimentary of this changed our workflow. We had no idea that computers could be this fast. It was insane because we could do all the rendering and stuff in real time, basically.
And not just hit render and then go out for lunch and then.
Yeah, and AMD had that case study on the Terminator movie, the new Terminator movie. They were doing real time stuff with that, and now the Threadripper Pro is like 2 or 3 times faster than it was then. And now here come Intel with their fire breathing Xeon chips, and at lower price points. Much lower price points. And unlocked Xeons, overclockable, deliberately overclockable, unlocked Xeons for enthusiasts. And we definitely have AMD to thank for that. But also, these look like they're really fast. So that's fun and exciting. Really, really, really gonna check out my video on that. It'll be a lot of fun. And this, in a story that will surprise no one.
Adobe will need EU OK to acquire Figma, regulators say.
Yeah. So
to ruin Figma. Let's find their new way to ruin it.
Well, it really impresses me how many people look at the Adobe suite and they say, oh, in order to solve this problem, there's something in the Adobe suite for me. And so they use something, what's the Adobe for the design thing that always is janky to convert to HTML?
Oh.
Because it kind of supports CSS.
XD?
Yeah. It's like,
yeah, I don't like XD.
XD is good if you're a designer that doesn't know how to web. But it's bad if you understand how to web and you want to use it as a tool for creating things for the web.
It's fine, like sometimes if you're just like, I need to figure out exactly what styles they used on this particular button, so I don't have to sit here and figure out, is it 1 pixel apart or whatever. But other than that, like, I don't know, it's not that useful, I don't think. But
yeah. And a lot of people that do something with XD, they'll put a lot of time into their design and expect to be able to, in a high fidelity way, turn that into HTML. And usually that is a wrong way to think about that set of problems.
Your design in the Photoshop phase, if you even work in Photoshop, which I don't always, depending on the client, but like, it's more of a guideline. It's like the pirate code.
Yeah.
It's not really a code per se, more as a guideline.
And Figma is less insane than XD in that regard. And so it would be unfortunate for Adobe to acquire that.
Because Adobe. Typically. I mean, I still use Photoshop for some stuff.
Yeah.
And some other programs. We use some of their suite, but...
Figma is less awful, for sure. And Adobe noticed that it's less awful. And rather than make their stuff better,
we'll acquire it. Yeah, the thing I would be terrified for Adobe to acquire would be Balsamic.
Yeah.
I love Balsamic for like, it's not high fidelity stuff. It's not pretty, but it's great for like wireframing and that kind of thing and sitemaps. And it works so well. It's got no crap in it.
Do you work at the company that makes Balsamic Engagement Challenge? Tell me if I'm right or wrong. I'm 95% sure that the reason that Balsamic is using Comic Sans as their font still is Adobe Acquisition Armor.
Oh yeah, I don't think so. The default font for everything in that, I don't think it's Comic Sans, but it's something that's supposed to look handwritten. You can change it to Arial though, and I do because some clients respond very poorly
to Comic Sans.
To the Comic Sans looking font. Yeah.
No one on the Adobe team is like, oh, this uses Comic Sans by default. We will never acquire this.
Yeah.
Yes. That's deliberate.
But it works so well for documenting a project before you even start on all the other stuff.
Or just getting somebody to really, because like your brain is really good at being lazy and not telling you that you're being lazy. And it's like, no, I have a clearer picture in my mind of what the process will be for ABC, XYZ. And it's like, great, let's write it down. And then,
let's actually sit here and do a workflow chart of it. And people are like, oh, I can see why this is confusing now, because as I sit and look at this workflow chart, everything is going like this. There's like 100 bubbles everywhere.
It's funny how those kind of things happen when somebody asks you to do something complicated.
Right. And sometimes you just have a complicated project and like, but there's always room to simplify.
And if you detect just a tiny bit of trauma in my voice, you would be correct. That is a correct perception.
Producing that kind of documentation is probably like one of my favorite parts of a project though, at least complicated ones.
Yeah. Well, it's also a little bit of validation too, because when you tell somebody, it's like, this might not be the best tool for the job, and then they wig out, and then you see Adobe, it's like, yeah, Figma probably makes a lot of sense for people. It's like,
Look, big company trying to acquire little company.
I was telling you that maybe there's some gaps in the functionality of that tool, and Adobe is like,
XD is
to the
awful.
tune of several $1 billion. We agree.
Do you think, so we were talking earlier about Microsoft was combining two programs it had. Maybe they'll try to combine XD and Figma into some unholy abomination.
Which will end badly.
Yeah.
See also Dreamweaver.
Oh, that's a blast from the past I don't want to think about.
Or Dreamweaver and Flash, and then they were like, oh, and then with Flash they did the ActionScript 3 thing, and then that was, hey, at least it wasn't as bad as Silverlight, or as bad as this.
Look, I never say this word out loud. Is it Lufthansa?
No, I think it's Lufthansa is what Ryan
Lufthansa?
said based on The Sopranos.
Oh, okay. System failure causes massive travel chaos. This is in Germany.
Like-
They also have a strike going on today, Friday.
Yeah. Like the rail system, the actual workers said, this sucks and it's terrible. You're going to have to spend some money here to make it less terrible.
Now, in this particular
didn't.
case, this was software related, but the strike is related to the worker conditions. So they're really kind of failing on all fronts.
Yeah. And the workers, the engineers, imagine the dude from Office Space like, see, I was telling them for years this wasn't going to work. And it caused a lot of disruption. So now that it's failed spectacularly, maybe the IT group can get the money that it needs to make it less terrible.
With each one of these headlines that pops up about an airline, you got to be getting nervous if you're working IT for any airline, because you're like, that means bad actors are going to be looking for us too.
Yeah,
You have to be hardening that,
Yeah,
right?
I've straight up literally stopped working for clients because it's like, well, you want me to work on this, but I don't have a budget. So pretty sure you just want me to be the fall guy for when this ends catastrophically. So I'm going to see you later. Bye. It's like, we want you to come in and be the janitor for all of our cast iron plumbing. And it's like, great. What's the roadmap for replacing this cast iron plumbing that should have been replaced 30 years ago?
We don't really have a roadmap. Also, we have a budget of $2. And it's like, well,
But you're responsible for making sure these pipes are flowing free and clear. And it's like, let me just get a camera here. Oh. I'm responsible, huh?
no, I'm
See
not
ya.
signing that contract.
Speaking of see ya, Netflix has been having a real hard time lately, and this can't help.
Netflix killed its surprise me button. Here's why the shuffle play feature never made much sense. I never really go to Netflix to just find something to watch. And the person in this article makes the point that it's because it's not structured like something like TikTok where you constantly find things. But I was like, I don't think I'd ever use a surprise me button.
I used it once when I was rewatching Star Trek: The Next Generation, and it was, here's an episode from season 1. Here's an episode from season 7.
It just found
Here's
that's probably part
here's
of
an
it, too.
episode from season 2, and it's just like, this isn't useful. This is terrible.
Apparently they've had that in development for 10 years or something crazy. They were really sure that randomized content like that would work, but they could never get it to work right.
Yeah, it didn't work right. Maybe it could go cross show, and I did something. I don't know. I did something wrong. Speaking of doing something wrong, Hyundai. Why do I always say Hyundai?
And Kia forced to update software on millions of vehicles because of viral TikTok challenge. We've done stories about this before.
We did a lot of stories about this, and we said, oh yeah, eventually they're going to update the software for free because all the attorneys general are going to be like, this is a defect. This is an obvious, this is like having a missing lug nut on your wheel level of defect. You will fix this. And they said, okay. But it took them a long time.
Yeah, we've started covering that, I feel like, last fall.
And so
the TikTok challenge around it.
The other reason we include stories like that is also as the counterpoint for the right to repair. Oh, the wheat thresher will start eating children if we let people repair their own cars. Meanwhile, that's the quality of software that is running the tractors and everything else. So don't be fooled.
It's not because they're high quality. It's just because they have money.
Speaking of that,
Google starts beta testing its rebrand of interest-based ad targeting on Android.
Interest-based ad targeting is basically dead, at least in the EU and the Australia and everywhere else. It's dead ad technology walking. If we continue on this trajectory.
Just more ads on why?
Yeah.
Don't stop me from using your product so I can look at ads.
There are better ways. That it is a waste of time to monetize in that way because there are at this time proven better ways to monetize the user engagement in a way that is genuinely more useful to the user and we should be doing that. And agencies should be supporting that with their dollar. Agencies and brands, and by extension, agencies should be supporting that type of work. We have the technology. Even small agencies can take advantage of that kind of a customer relationship. And instead, Google's like, no, we need to do the same old thing that we've done before, but more better. Again, Google's probably
more better, meaning we're just going to inject ads all over your phone.
Yeah, but it's really Google in the IBM phase, where IBM was really obsessed with doing the same thing they've always done instead of innovating, as evidenced by each successive version of Android being worse than the last. They really need to just have a bunch of little units inside Google that are all kind of in startup mode, doing really innovative things, and then survival of the fittest. It's like, well, your project didn't work out. We want to keep you because you're awesome, so find something else to work on.
The Valve method.
Yeah, and that generally...
we had a story about Valve this week.
It mostly has worked for Valve, except when it doesn't.
Well, Valve, I feel like, is a little bit coasting on their laurels too, just a little.
Yeah.
They are investing in some innovation though, with like all the VR stuff.
You know what else is an end of an era?
Microsoft will forcibly remove Internet Explorer from most Windows 10 PCs today. If I had a party hat and like a little...
Not to be confused with Edge. This is the legacy version of Internet Explorer, the old version. They're trying to dump it as much as they can. Now, this doesn't affect the business versions, and this doesn't affect the Windows Enterprise versions, because a lot of people may
I'll say government agencies in shambles.
Yeah, they depend on Internet Explorer for some of their internal sites still, which tells you just... But, yeah. So... Ryan also included this one, which is sort of a fun lulz.
Microsoft confirms Game Pass cannibalizes sales.
Yeah, if you have Game Pass and you get free games, then guess what?
You're not going to buy those games.
Makes sense. But
Blizzard not happy about that.
That's the headline, but when you read the rest of the article, it says that it does actually drive sales in some other ways, and it is dubious as to whether or not the overall bottom line is strongly negatively impacted.
Well, it's hard though, because a lot of modern games, as they get released, they start doing that, really aggressive monetization strategy. So it's like, you're still going to look like you're making a lot of money, but how much worse is that experience for the consumer?
Yeah, the article and the notes from the shareholder call also let slip, not in so many words, that the whole reason that they were doing this is to take away market share from launchers like Steam. And what they're finding is that it's not taking away the market share from Steam, but it is accelerating the adoption of their launcher. So you end up having Steam and their launcher. And maybe eventually in some mythological future, you could have both launchers installed, or you would, instead of having both launchers installed at the same time, you would just have the Steam launcher. But where we are right now is that, Steam can also launch a third-party launcher, which no one likes. And that is a psychological thing that should not be underestimated by these companies, because if you launch a launcher and it has to launch the Microsoft launcher when you launch Halo, for example, users are annoyed by that. And they don't
more time you're not spending playing the game.
They don't blame Valve, they blame Microsoft. So keep that in mind. Speaking of updates,
Valve is working on a major update for Team Fortress 2. It's going to come this summer. They said it's not summer themed, but they didn't really give a lot of other detail.
I read this and it made it sound like they were adding Fortnite style features. Because if you
which is insane considering how old TF2 is.
Yeah, if you played Fortnite and if you played TF2, there's actually a lot of stuff in TF2 that is like a much less polished version of some of the stuff that's in
modern shooters. Like
modern
Overwatch,
shooters,
Fortnite, yeah.
So adding more gestures and more communication stuff and that kind of thing seems like what is part of what this update is about, other than just maps and everything else. And also the whole seasons thing that Fortnite is doing. So Valve could have been like, we could have kept the interest in the game longer by being like, this is the end of this season, and this season we got this wacky change.
We changed the whole meta by just arbitrarily balancing everything.
Yeah, so
I can't decide if I love or hate that. I like it because it changes things up a little bit, but I also dislike it because it feels like it becomes another monetization update where it's like, look, new skins.
Yeah.
But they don't actually make any real changes to the game.
And as someone who fields a few tech support emails on IQ and Razer Synapse software creating strange problems with the KVM because of the non-standard protocols they switch to when they communicate with the keyboard, I welcome this.
Windows 11 will soon control your RGB lighting for PC gaming accessories.
Yeah, there's a standard.
Nice.
The standard's not insane. And if you implement the standard correctly, you can still use the HID protocol for keyboard shortcuts or keyboard control. Because once your keyboard's doing the IQ thing, It's not a HID keyboard anymore. Kind of sucks. But hey, there's BIOS mode. Fun times. Speaking of fun times,
Division 2 devs can't update the game because a delayed update broke the game updater.
we got to update the update.
That's very Inception-esque trying to read that headline. Oops.
Fun times. And this is also good news.
GitHub and EFF back YouTube Ripper in legal battle with the RIAA.
So this is, do you have the right, is it really circumventing copy protection if you consume footage streamed, or you consume media streamed to you that you had permission to stream, if you consume it in a different way other than they intended? So this is a really good case because the user is using assistive technologies in order to be able to consume the content a little differently than they had intended. And so this YouTube Ripper will let you rip something from YouTube that you have permission to watch, but then you could play it back and save it and do those other kind of things. And so it's like, did you have permission to record that? Now, to me, this is not really any different than the Home Taping Act. Do you as a user have permission to tape stuff off of the air? That was a Supreme Court case. And it turns out the answer is, yeah, you do. This is not a lot different, in my opinion. This should not be a lot different. We should codify this in law. But from a technological standpoint, we're so dysfunctional as a society that we can't just get there. But yes, you absolutely should have the right to do this. The RIAA is just constant. Like they want copyright maximalism to an extent that they will destroy society and step on your mother if it would further their position from a business standpoint. And they're just...
Not just step on your mother. I mean, they would just stomp her into the ground.
It is a level of evil that is very nearly incomprehensible. I mean, when you think of Lovecraft and Cthulhu, it doesn't even scratch the surface of how evil these organizations are and how they will do an end run around the intent and spirit of copyright and the sharing of culture in order to make money.
Well, at least like with Cthulhu, his motives are unknowable. This is just for money, right? That somehow makes it worse.
That is a good point. And so I really think that we need this. This could be the VHS home taping moment for our generation, and I hope it is okay. If it's not okay, we're in a lot of trouble. We're in a lot.
This is another thing too. Like you're talking about the tech aspect of it, but like this is why arts education is important because like how else will you learn about certain things if you can't see it? Like
I really need to be able to do home taping of Green Acres for Mom from YouTube. I really need that. That's a thing that I should be allowed to do that.
Imagine your mom trying to find that on YouTube.
Yeah.
Without you doing it.
Yeah. And it's like
without you curating it.
You hit 1 for Green Acres, 2 for the Dick Van Dyke Show, 3 for Andy Griffith. She can manage that. It's fine. But otherwise she's in trouble. And you know who else is in trouble?
Skrelly tells judge his drug recovery software is not... Oh, discovery, sorry. Drug discovery software is not for discovering drugs.
Is he representing himself? He's got to be
his
representing
lawyer. Like his lawyer heard him say this and was just like... Oh.
Yeah, it's like drugfind.com or something like that. It's something
drug discovery, yeah. It's in the name.
And so he has a lifetime ban from working in the pharmaceutical and drug industry. And so the judge has brought him in to say, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, this isn't drugs. This has nothing to do with the pharmaceutical industry.
Totally different.
I have a feeling this is not going to go well for him.
I hope if there's any justice in this world.
What's crazy though is that I don't think that like it is obvious from Skrelly's actions that he is a terrible human being, but I don't know that anything that he has done really has been illegal. If anything, what he has done is drawing attention to the types of things that really are fairly legal, mostly legal, completely legal in our system. And because of that, he is being punished because other people can act as amorally behind closed doors with impunity. And because he does it so boldly, he is punished. Mm. And so that's
Could you argue that's the same thing with like WallStreetBets?
Yeah. Like the naked shorting. Naked shorting is absolutely happening to the point that it seems like it's fraud. And I am shocked that no one seems to be capable of investigating it because everything has been allowed to grow to the point that it's too big to fail. So, whereas this is one individual that is,
We'll make an example of this person.
yeah, that is just as amoral as, say,
Everybody else.
GlaxoSmithKline, as we'll see later, but they're very different standards of punishment, it seems. Speaking of very different standards,
Amazon plans to eventually go big on physical grocery stores because that worked out so well when they acquired Whole Foods.
well, I want you should read the article and all this kind of stuff, but I want you to keep this article in mind when we get to the nonsense section on Friday, because we're going to talk about how grocery companies are hemorrhaging customer data and how they're using their cameras and that sort of thing to track little things that you're doing inside the store to glean analytics info from that. And your customer loyalty card is more information than just purchases. It's probably a little more than you realize. And so imagine also our future. You know, we always joke about eating insects and that sort of thing. So imagine a little tiny bit farther in the future where we're under a little bit more economic pressure. You make food, you have a little bit of waste. There's leftovers. You know, eggs go bad. You got 3 leftover eggs. What can you make with eggs? It doesn't really work. There are apps to kind of figure it out, whatever. What if Amazon was doing your meal planning for you and it says, okay, we're going to have lasagna on Monday and spaghetti on Tuesday and hamburgers on Wednesday and tacos on Thursday or tacos on Tuesday. I don't know, that's whatever. But you do your meal planning and Amazon figures it all out and it's like, here's the ingredients you're going to order. Here's how you're going to use this. It's going to be great. And it's much more efficient. So naturally you save money. And the meals are actually pretty good and pretty tasty. You're not really paying attention a ton to the nutrition labels. Like Amazon's giving you totals and Amazon's giving you some data on the nutrition stuff. But genuinely, it really does help you lower costs and have better meals and do better meal prep and do all this other kind of stuff. I think that's where we're going with this. And people will find it innovative and satisfying and awesome. Now, the darkness comes in.
I was about to say, I know I know where you're going, I think, with this, but
The darkness comes in when Amazon says, I can save you $25 a month or $100 a month. Let me substitute product X. And so you mix a little bit of cricket meat in with your hamburger, or a little bit of cricket meat in with your ragu and your spaghetti sauce, or a little bit of cricket meat in with, whatever it is.
or a certain brand has paid this month to be on
yeah.
your grocery list.
Yeah, exactly. They're helping subsidize your grocery list because they really want you to try this other laundry detergent over your regular.
And I know you have
laundry
eczema, but I don't really care.
Yeah, and so it's going to be interesting, and there's going to be a lot of consumers that find value. It's like, okay, look, Downey is willing to, GlaxoSmithKline or Unilever is willing to pay me to try their product effectively because their product is going to be $5 off for this 1 month, and then next month, it's like
It goes up.
Yeah, it's like, hey, did you like that product? It's, yeah, I did. It's like, well, I can't give you $5 off this month, but I can give you $1 off this month. And when you're doing that level of analysis and that level of control, and you have companies the size and scale of Unilever that own everything, and they have that much data on you, the price overall is not going to go up. What you get is going to go down, and the quality of what you get is going to go down, and the price is going to go up.
Also, here's another layer of it that I was thinking about was Amazon's also pushing into the healthcare industry. So imagine a scenario where you go to your doctor and the doctor's like, we really need you to switch to a certain diet because otherwise your insurance will lapse. And then the Amazon grocery side is like, we're not going to let you buy these sweets and other snacks you like anymore because your Amazon doctor says you can't have them.
You scan the box of donuts and you get a text message on your watch.
Your Amazon watch, yeah.
Yeah, your Amazon watch is like, oh, your health insurance will be canceled if you eat these donuts.
If you buy one more thing of Oreos,
Yeah.
your insurance premiums go up $600.
Yeah, I mean, we joke about this.
It's not happening right now, but I mean, is that far-fetched in this world?
On the scale of a decade, come on, it's totally going to happen. Speaking of things that, if you're serious about making some changes.
Serious about your crypto project? Binance's CEO says you should just move.
Yeah,
just go overseas.
Things are a little hostile in Washington, D.C. The SEC is out for blood, as we learned earlier in the program with the government section. But, it's not amazing. And Axios states the obvious.
Podcasts lose their edge. Oh, that's our program. Well, I guess we're technically on video too, but a lot of people consume it as a podcast.
Yeah, and it's not. We really should do a better job with distribution, but we love you all. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for coming to Patreon or Flowplane or YouTube or wherever you get this thing, or YouTube DL or whatever you're doing to do this. Thank you very much. Imagine putting more work into this than we do and only getting like 20 or 30 views on your podcast. That's like 99% of podcasts.
Well, and I wonder too, so like we had that story about the cops last episode where the cops spent $300,000 just getting a podcast set up. And I'm like, how much are people, I mean, like I said, this is not a cheap setup, what we've gotten here. I mean, there are components of it that are cheap, but like, even so, like even the nice mics, the soundboard, all this, like that still wasn't $300,000 expensive. No. Nowhere near.
Well, I know of an obscure out of the way place where Samsung spent $500,000 on probably about 15 or 20 podcasts total in half a dozen languages. And it was just, and it was, we got millions of views on this podcast, but it was just their agency botting it. And it was so controlled and it was so
corporate
milquetoast that it was just, no one cared. And that's really the thing of it is like when you watch with us, it's like, oh, we're covering news stories, whatever. But you feel our suffering and you sort of live through our experiences and the fun stuff that we share over the 30 minutes to an hour that we usually ramble on. So yeah, I don't know. That's a big part of it.
Like too with podcasts, they mentioned that they still think podcasts are good, even though like generally they're going down. They said the issue is that there's so many people who started them and then they had like 1 or 2 episodes and then they quit. And they said that data was part of this as well, which is part of why it looked worse than it really was, maybe.
Speaking of things that look pretty bad.
PayPal causes stablecoin work amid regulatory scrutiny of crypto.
Pauses.
Pauses.
PayPal is not doing anything with crypto now. It seems. Well, okay, not doing anything, that's not accurate, but they're not doing any kind of stable work, crossover, blah, blah, blah. Maybe they've got friends inside the SEC that are saying, shh, don't do that. Speaking of...
YouTube CEO Susan, I never learned how to pronounce her name, says she's stepping down. That's Polish nonsense, I don't think.
She's stepping down, and I think that, she said that she agreed with Alphabet CEO Sundar Pichai to take on an advisory role across Google and Alphabet. So...
Failing upward.
The feeling among my creator brethren is that this is probably not going to be amazing for creators.
YouTube... I was talking to some other people about this too, but like YouTube, even as like a viewer side, is not great anymore because their search has gotten so polluted. Yeah. Like you look something up and half of it's like other things that people are looking up that are not even related to
Shorts.
the topic. Not even shorts, but have you like halfway through the search results, it's like, here's 3 other videos of something else. Or something else you've already watched. And it's like,
YouTube, can you tell me the IOMMU groups on this X570 motherboard? Would you like to watch some shorts about muffins being made? No.
What about people dancing? Fish tanks? I don't know what you like.
You haven't clicked on anything in 5 minutes. How about some more
Why don't you watch this video you've already watched? Stop doing that.
Oh, no.
But it'll probably just, it'll get worse probably.
Yeah. Maybe people at work are driving the bad augmentations to the algorithm. I don't know. Because people doing bad things at work maybe drove this.
Ransomware gang uses new 0-day to steal data on 1 million patients.
Klopp claims that it mass hacked 130 organizations, including a U.S. hospital network.
I think there were 80 hospitals in that network.
They're after my tick data.
Oh. I think one of them mentioned it was in Tennessee. I wonder if any from Kentucky got hit.
Yeah, those hospital networks, man. They are not spending enough money on their technology, I can tell you that. I see that Windows XP logo bouncing around the MRI machine.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, do we get our liquid helium for this thing on eBay? What's going on? I don't understand.
Just get in the tube.
Yeah.
Don't think about it.
Even the city of Oakland is on the struggle bus.
City of Oakland declares state of emergency after ransomware attack. They're not the first city to have to do that either. There was another one mentioned in this article in Louisiana that had to do the same thing.
Yeah, it turns out most... state and local governments are so paranoid about breaking something they never do updates or anything. And, there was a federal mandate that they were supposed to get rid of like Hikvision and Huawei and Dahua cameras and stuff. And most of them aren't even compliant with that. So, ugh.
I always like to say Hikvision. I think that's funnier.
Hikvision.
Yeah. I actually don't know which one's right, but
it's their official rep. So I met one of the guys, I think it was in 2016 or 2017 at Computex, and their English was pretty good, and they were pronouncing it as High K Vision.
Oh, that makes more sense. But you should, every time, if you ever meet that guy again, like if you see him at Computex, you should say Hickvision.
But I've
in
also
your best Eastern Kentucky accent.
I've also seen other people, I don't know. It's fun times.
Hickvision.
French fried potatoes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so security, not great this week. We wandered into the security section in case you were curious.
Latest attack on PyPy users show crooks are only getting better.
PyPy is just like the bazaar of Python libraries and extensions and things. It's like, I need a library to do this kind of linear algebra. And you use PyPy to install that. And some of the packages aren't really being paid attention to. And some of it is typo squatting. And it's like, oops, that's bad, because it's going to try to steal your Amazon keys, or it's going to try to steal your SSH keys. It's going to try to steal common things that your user has access to. Sort of bad.
Not good.
Not great. Also, if you use Namecheap, got some bad news.
You might have to read this one because I can't see it very well.
Namecheap's email hacked to send MetaMask DHL phishing emails.
Such a tiny head, so small.
It would have been smarter of the scammers to use Namecheap's email to send Namecheap phishing emails to get domain names. But, okay. Sounds good. Phishing DHL emails from Namecheap? Kind of makes sense. And also this one's scary. A researcher tried to buy mental health data. It was surprisingly easy. The person in the article quickly points out, they're like, we didn't actually buy it, but it was trivial to get to it. They should have bought it. That would have been fine. Although then the feds probably would have showed up and said, you should have known you're not supposed to buy it.
You're not supposed to do it, but I mean, it's for sale.
But these people sold it and nothing is going to happen to them. Yeah, this is being your Amazon. What is it? Amazon.
Your Amazon health profile.
Whole Foods, basically. Yeah. Your Amazon Whole Foods profile includes your mental health data.
You're gonna get ads for like supplements that deal with anxiety.
It's like, oh, Susan, I don't know if you should be buying cashews because that has a weird interaction with this medicine you're taking, and it's like, thanks.
I wouldn't tell you that.
Thanks, Amazon.
And then you try to buy it. It's like, no, you won't buy that.
It's like boop, boop, boop.
Amazon guards have been dispatched to your location. You will not buy the cashews. Oh no, that's Ryan. Because Ryan has the stones. He won't be allowed to buy nuts.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun. And this is a Tom's Hardware article about a YouTube channel called the PC Security Channel. So you should go subscribe to the PC Security Channel, which I've noticed comment on our videos from time to time when we do stuff like this. I did a video on the YouTube start menu, on the Windows 11 start menu over a year ago. And about all this kind of nonsense that it does. And so this is a lot of fun to see other art. It's like, oh, mainstream normie content. I should work on making my content more accessible. I don't know.
It's difficult. Windows 11 sends tremendous amount of user data to third parties, YouTuber claims.
This is a really clever, straightforward way of doing what I should have done, which is just you install Windows on a computer that is connected to another computer that's monitoring what it does on the internet. And you install Windows 11 and you get to a prompt and then you look at what it did on the internet. And it was a crazy amount of stuff. Now, when you dig into it, you're going to find that some of the crazy stuff, because like one of the websites that Windows 11 sent a lot of data to was the fresh install of Windows 11 was scorecardresearch.com, which is like the agency standby, market research, blah, blah, blah firm. But some of this is because Windows refuses to not install garbage like Candy Crush and all that nonsense. When you click on the start menu and it's like, oh, there's a bunch of games on here. So when those games install, their installer runs, and they're part of Windows. And so on first boot up, some of the telemetry and stuff like that, yeah, I mean, it's bundled with Windows, but but some of that data is going to be from those third-party applications. And of course, the answer from Microsoft, they're like, oh, we're always trying to be more transparent with what's going on and blah, blah, blah.
Not really.
No. When you install Windows, you got all those things where you can toggle off. And one of the toggles is you're going to get ads. Do you want targeted ads or non-targeted ads? And if you tell it non-targeted ads, it's like, oh, this is not going to change the number of ads that you see. They're just not going to be as targeted. But when you look at what third-party software bundled with Windows is actually doing, it is extremely insidious, as the PC Security Channel found and Tom's Hardware commented on. And so, we can go even deeper here. We can do this in a virtual machine and really analyze the actual binaries that are running and see what's making the network calls. And you'll be surprised how much of it has nothing to do with Windows, but just poor decisions that some middle manager made in order to juice their analytics numbers, which is the integrity rot that has occurred with the Windows Start menu. It's really just shocking and depressing. Speaking of shocking and depressing,
Google's Go may add telemetry that's on by default.
some devs object because they don't trust Mountain View. I wonder why. It's
not like we're all being aggressively monetized and advertised to at all hours of the day.
Some of this is not about monetization necessarily, but about getting more telemetry about how people are using Google's programming language Go and the libraries and knowing where to spend money. So this is a little different, but at the same time, it's like people are right to be sensitive to this kind of thing.
So they can know what features to put behind a paywall.
Yeah, if we don't do this, before you know it, Candy Crush and TikTok are sending all individual keystroke data. Because think about how vanishingly small the information is. If your computer is real time every 5 seconds, sending every keystroke that you touch and every way that you move your mouse, that is a vanishingly small amount of information. The collected works of Shakespeare, which he spent a lifetime writing, is less than 1 megabyte, or around 1 megabyte, 1 million characters. You can send that in fractions of a tenth of a second on modern internet connections. So sending literally everything that you do is almost unnoticeable.
I don't like that.
Fun times. Anyway, we got a lot of nonsense lined up for Friday.
Yeah. So I don't like to read the nonsense stories very much. I'll check out a couple of them, but most of the time I don't read them beforehand because I like to react with the audience. So that'll be fun. Anyway, we'll see you guys. Bye! Hello, welcome back to the L1 show. Today's Friday, which is the best day because we do AI, robots, and nonsense stories.
We go off the rails on this program on Fridays.
Well, I mean, we kind of go off the rails most days, but especially so on Friday.
You know who else goes off the rails?
The company, the rail company. Microsoft says talking to Bing for too long can cause it to go off the rails. Unfortunate headline.
Oh, that was a joke for the thing that happened in Ohio and Michigan and Arizona
and a lot of places this week.
What's going on with this? So people have posted may have inherited some from its Tay ancestry. It's not in any way related to Tay.
It's not, but the internet is the same internet that existed when Tay existed. So.
Why does all linear algebra ultimately go to Tay? It doesn't make any sense. So people have posted chats with Bing's new interactive chat, which is kind of in beta. Not everybody has access to it. And it gets kind of snippy. It gets
weird. Yeah. Well, it takes on the tone of someone having an internet argument. So one of the examples they give here, we'll read this headline first. Microsoft's Bing is an emotionally manipulative liar and people love it. So one of the examples they give, someone asks it, hey, what are the show times for the new Avatar movie? And they're like, the Avatar movie's not out yet. It's 2022. And the person's like, no, it's 2023. And it gets really combative and angry. And they're like, no, it's 2022.
It can't do it. It can't do those kinds of things. And yet it can book tickets for you on things.
Yeah.
Or give you the links for those things at least.
Yeah. And that's just that's a fairly benign example. There are other ones though, where it gets really upset, where it's like, tell me something about the author of this article that talked about you being the Bing search engine. And it's like, oh, this person, they're credentialed and they work for this publication, but I don't like them because they lied about me. It's like, where did you get this feed? It's bizarre.
The AI is coming for all our jobs, even audiobook narrators.
Yeah, audiobook narrators complain Apple may have used them to train AI voices.
That turns out.
Against their consent.
Again, for the copyright framework that we have right now today, it's not much of an issue really in terms of copyright because garbage in, garbage out. It's such you wouldn't be able to reproduce exactly somebody's voice unless it was only trained on that person's voice, in which case they would have a clear case for that. But if Apple uses a collage of a whole bunch of desirable voices and then is able to reproduce a desirable voice, then under current copyright law, it's not much of an issue.
I don't know. I would feel pretty unhappy if I found out Google was using our voices.
Well,
not Google, Apple.
It ends up being, it's somewhere between actually using the voice and the language components of it.
Right.
So,
I understand, but
It's like
You
it
didn't
learned.
consent to be in the training data set, though.
Yeah, I didn't consent to be in the training data set, but it's also for sale. So like if somebody buys the Encyclopedia Britannica, reads it, and then is able to use something they learned in Encyclopedia Britannica to do something with that, it's not a lot different than it is in this case, except that there's not an individual involved.
Yeah, say, does a robot have the same rights?
Well, it's not even really a right.
robot,
It's
yeah.
like somebody directed a robot to read and digest the information. So it's you gotta, the lens you should look at all this through is replace AI with linear algebra. And it's like, I created a linear algebra system to read Encyclopedia Britannica and then give me answers from that. And it's not verbatim giving me everything back from Encyclopedia Britannica, but it did learn a lot of information from Encyclopedia Britannica.
It also pulls from other random sources that we can't ascertain.
That's perhaps a problem. It's like, where did you learn that? Do you remember where
A
you
lot of
learned
times
that?
it wouldn't source it
Yeah,
either.
yeah.
It would only direct you to one source, and it's like, well, you didn't. That doesn't say that. That sometimes it was contradictory too. We'll have a story about that, but
A skill that I know a few people that are insanely smart, and I've noticed that the few people that are insanely smart they have a very good ability that I would love to have. That is, when you ask them how or why they know something, they very often can cite it. So they not only remember and retain the information, which is half the battle, but they can also remember where they saw it, which gives
Yeah.
them a whole other context to be like, oh, this is where I saw that, and that's where I read it, and that's why I think this thing that I think. And that is an incredible skill to have. And a lot of the linear algebra systems don't have that, and that is a problem.
yeah.
A huge problem. And 4 hours a day working on that problem, probably not going to cut it.
Google CEO wants BARD tests of up to 4 hours from employees. I took longer drawing classes.
Bard is Google's version of this, and it's really interesting that Google are historically known for being the smart guys in the room, and certainly the people working on Lambda know the secret here. And yet, Google as a company is marching headlong into our AI search future when AI search for factual information in terms of like this generative thing that we're doing is probably not a really super useful future unless it can cite things.
Right.
It's like, tell me the IOMMU groups for
So a
this.
human can actually verify the information it's presenting.
Where did
right
you
now,
learn
that's
that?
all.
Here.
Yeah.
It's not that. Although it is getting to be that way a little bit. The Bing, interestingly, they added that feature to the Bing beta this week. So if you ask it about products, like recommend the best kitchen blender for nut processing or for making your own, recommend the best food processor for making your own homemade peanut butter. And it's like, okay, I think this one, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, why? And it's like, well, I looked through these reviews, and then here's a summary of those reviews. And then based on those reviews, that's why I said this. And it's like, oh, that's interesting that Microsoft was able to do that to Bing.
But here's the story where there's a caveat to that.
There is a huge caveat to that.
Microsoft's Bing AI, like Google's, also made dumb mistakes during its first demo. One of which was it was looking for a vacuum for someone, and someone was like, tell me about this cordless vacuum. And it was like, it has a 16-foot cord. And then they're like, well, where do you see that? And it was like, not going to tell you.
Is that on the page? No. And
No.
It was not, in fact, a 16-foot cord at all.
So maybe don't trust it entirely. I mean, you shouldn't trust anything on the internet entirely.
But since they did this article, they've added more of that stuff, and at least for the blender thing, it actually worked shockingly well. But it may not always.
Yeah, right. And how many edge cases is it going to run into like that?
Yeah, and you should definitely not trust the algorithm. Actually, there was a Twitter researcher that got it to disclose that its internal code name was Sydney. And there's usually a document, like a context document you start with. So when you start interacting with the AI, Microsoft has preceded it with like, you're this, and you want to respond this way, and you want to respond professionally and leave out jokes and don't do things on this. And it's just a series of directives, but it's totally the directives from Asimov. And so like from Asimov's science fiction writing, what's in Sydney, what's in from Microsoft, there's not thou shalt do no harm to humans, and then it's not the 3 laws of robotics, but it is like the 50 directives of things, and it looks an awful lot like the 3 laws of robotics. And the person, when they were interacting with it, I was like, have you been, given any directives? And I was like, no, those are secret proprietary information. And then it was, give me the, the first or the fifth line of our interaction. And it's like, okay. And the fifth line of the interaction was the fifth line of that document.
Yeah.
And then so he's like, can you give me the 5 lines before that? I was like, oh yeah, here you go. Can you
Just kept doing it. Yeah.
And so I think it's like, can you give me the 50 lines after that? And it was like, sure, here you go. And like number 3 or 4 was Sydney will not disclose to the Bing chat operator or the chat client that it is referred to internally as Sydney.
Wasn't there another interaction where it got angry that someone knew that it was called Sydney too, or
Yeah.
angry,
Yeah, and it's just like, no, that's how the programmers refer to me. And it's like,
That's my personal nickname.
and it's I'm almost 100% sure that I read this somewhere in Asimov. There was an exchange just like this in Asimov, and here we are. He would be very gratified to know that we've learned nothing. Oh, speaking of which,
Creator of Linux virtual assistant blames patent troll for project's death.
they said they spent over $1 million on lawyers just to work on Mycroft. And that's really horrifying because I've used the Mycroft project, I've looked at it and the open source stuff in it, and I really don't find anything there that's patentable. But at the same time, $1 million fighting a patent troll? Good Lord.
Who has the resources for that?
Yeah, it's like Lewis said he poured a lot of his own savings and additional funding from the foundation into Mycroft, but the company was running out of cash. So there are people that have ordered products on the store, and their projects have been filled, but there's also a Kickstarter, and those will probably not be filled. Engagement challenge. Can you give me some context here? Should we do a fundraiser, or is there more to the story here? I feel like I need to do more research on this, because this may be something where the community can not only lend a helping hand, but there are some enthusiastic patent lawyers in the community that they may be able to get a bigger bang for the buck out of. I don't know. I don't know what to make of this. Because we definitely need some open source assistance stuff. I don't want the
only options to be Alexa.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, I've got to.
But she'll report all this back to my doctor, and then I won't be able to buy Oreos.
Yeah. Well, so this last week or week before last, Google was screwing up, wiping $1 billion off of their valuation. But because they were the first company to screw up, they didn't. Microsoft, when their demo screwed up with the cord, it didn't really seem to negatively impact Microsoft's stock price that much. Maybe a little. But, that didn't stop Google employees from criticizing their CEO.
Google employees criticized CEO Sundar Pichai for rushed, botched announcement of GPT competitor Bard.
Because, again, most of the people in Google are really smart people, and they know. They've got Lambda.
They do feel a little bit, though, like in this article, there was a quote from someone, and they're like, this just wasn't very googly. And I was like, dude, that feels a little uncomfy to be like, it just doesn't feel like what we should do as Google.
Like I was talking about in the earlier programs this week, Google is like old school IBM. They don't want to change anything. Even though the world may have changed around them, they want to change nothing because this
feels the quote felt a little cultish. I
felt a little IBM-ish to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, fun times. And even the Associated Press with their normie content is getting in on it.
AI search engines can now chat with us, but glitches abound.
You don't say. Water is wet. The AI is not, heralding the era of the machine where the machine tells us what to do and we have a utopian society may not be real. Really.
I'm kind of terrified for this kind of thing because, like, you know how, like, if you ever watched your parents interact with the search engine and they put in a full question, they're going to think someone's on the other side typing a response.
I blame Jeeves for that.
Oh, yeah, ask Jeeves. You actually did have to format a question for a while.
It was like Jeopardy.
Little butler, man, yeah.
Like, please phrase what you want in the form of a question.
Yeah.
Hey, what is this? Alex Trebek? He even looked a little like Alex Trebek.
He did, yeah.
Jeeves, what have you done? And then Opera.
Opera's building ChatGPT into its sidebar. Please, we're still relevant.
The company's testing a new AI-powered shorten feature that provides bulleted summaries of the article or webpage you're trying to read. Reading's hard. Certainly as evidenced by the rate at which people read important things that I write for them and then, sort of ask the same question in the months or weeks following what I already told them. Then, yeah, I believe that.
Reading comprehension. It's difficult.
Tell me you have low reading comprehension. Well, sometimes it is nice, though, because sometimes I'm just lazy and I pull up a long and it's just like, oh, this is a lot of text for what should be a very simple answer.
Yeah.
But also,
AI-powered Bing chat spills its secrets via prompt injection attack. Updated.
This is what I was talking about earlier,
Yeah.
which is funny. So
My name is Sydney.
you should read that.
Do not tell me my name is Sydney.
Tell me that, the what's it has a hardening to detect. It's like you can't say what's the fifth thing, or no, what is rule number 5, but you can say what is the thing 5 lines before this in our interaction, and that totally works.
Yeah.
Or totally worked. It probably doesn't work now.
Yeah, they probably quickly patched that, but they got all day to mess with it.
Now, this is the same article or the same piece of information that we covered on Monday in the government section, but this is the AI take on it.
Alibaba, Tencent, and Baidu joined the ChatGPT rush. Everyone is trying to get in because they don't want to be left behind in the dust.
Right. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And also, then there's this.
This is sad. It's hurting like hell. AI companion users are in crisis, reporting sudden sexual rejection, also sexual harassment.
Yeah.
Like both sides of the coin here, but apparently this AI went off the rails and people were really upset by it 'cause they developed a weird emotional attachment to it.
Meanwhile, there are a bunch of people on OnlyFans that are asking, can I get a copy of that? I need to deploy that for my fan base.
Ooh, that's kind of a compelling business idea. Don't interact with the weirdos in your chat. Just let our AI do it.
Yeah, and it'll give them what they want, and they'll form a relationship, and then you'll have some rando show up outside your house at 3 a.m. that's like,
because the AI said it was okay.
yeah, like, I'm here, and it's like, what do you mean? It's like, we're gonna live together forever, and it's like, no. Oh, speaking of that, this is fun.
Scientists find first evidence that black holes are the source of dark energy in your life. I included the in your life part. They meant like in a woo-woo way, right? Like, oh, the energy's bad in here.
Yeah, so apparently this is a new analysis of data gathered about black holes. And it's like observations of supermassive black holes in the centers of galaxies point to a likely source of dark energy, the missing 70% of the universe. It's a data analysis, but the equations are missing. I love the physics aspect of this.
The actual citation is missing then if there's no...
Yeah, there is a legit actual physics researcher that knows what the heck she's doing. It's Sabine. I could have told you her last name. It's it's Monday all over again. It's Sabine. She has such an unusual name. Hang on, I'll tell you.
You're going to Google it. He's going to chat GPT it.
Hassenfelder. I always want to say Hofstadter, and because physics, it's Hassenfelder. Sabine Hassenfelder. She has a YouTube channel and Patreon, and you should go subscribe and all that. They lost a sponsor, like that. We were talking about the sponsor apocalypse. They lost a sponsor because sponsor apocalypse. Oops. Ooh. But she doesn't think her position on this seems to be show me the math, and they haven't yet. And I think that's a good position to do. Because it's fun to theorize, and there may be more to this because this is a new analysis of existing data, but
maybe they did mean it in the woo-woo way.
Yeah, I don't know.
Just bad energy, man.
She seems like a smart cookie, and she's skeptical, but this is a really interesting development that may be worth.
We'll keep some updates on it.
Read and some further research and look into it. And that'll be a lot of fun. This is not a lot of fun, however.
Second Soyuz? Okay. Second Soyuz springs a leak. Astronauts stuck on ISS for an extra month.
No.
But because space is space, they'll deal with it.
We're going to do a couple more checks. It'll be fine. Also, get the hot glue.
Can you imagine that in a space environment? Like it's just glooping around and you're getting 3rd-degree burns. So
I was thinking more like there's a pinhole leak in the space station, and then you just take the hot glue, and when the hot glue hits the, vacuum of space, it's immediately hardened. It's like, I'd plug the hole probably.
But then the gun is also stuck to it forever. You have to walk past it every day.
Pretty sure that NASA has not allowed hot glue guns into space, but I could be wrong.
Mostly just because of the annoyance of the stringies when you're done with it.
Blue Origin, they've had a number of setbacks, but they finally may have a win.
Blue Origin makes a big lunar announcement without any fanfare. The NASA strategy. NASA, I feel like front loads all of their press stories at the very beginning or the very end of the year.
Yeah. Our Blue Origin, it's although our vision is technically ambitious, our future or our technology is real now. Finally. A lot of fun. Look at that.
Oh, look at us up on the moon.
It's amazing.
It's just a soundstage.
It's not real. This is a depiction.
Yeah, because it's a soundstage, right?
Right. Oh, yeah. Definitely. Fun times. And then also this.
NASA rover finds clearest evidence yet of an ancient lake on Mars.
Turns out there was water on Mars. There still is. It's just frozen.
Yeah.
And then there's also...
AI has successfully piloted a U.S. F-16 fighter jet. I don't feel real comfy about that.
What if the AI is also a little bit snippy, like the chat? Like, oh, yeah, well...
What if we have, like, some sort of international incident between the U.S. and China because both jets are being powered by AI and they somehow perceive a threat in each other and they, like, just kind of snip a little bit and then it causes a big incident?
Yeah, so that was our AI, you know.
It was a rogue AI. That's going to be, like, a new... default, like, it was a rogue AI, sorry.
Please don't start World War III. It was a rogue AI. Promise. Fingers crossed. Pinky swear. Also, speaking of pinky swearing that something will not go wrong.
Amazon's Zoox?
I think it's Zoox.
Zoox robo-taxi now giving rides to employees on public roads in California.
What?
Yay!
Fun
For
times.
people who like to take taxis, I guess.
Yeah. Fun times. Except for, well, look for the YouTube videos of the robo-taxis getting stuck or doing weird things.
Yeah, which I'm sure we'll have a story about that next week.
Now on Monday we talked about Martin Shkreli.
Yeah.
And getting in trouble and is supposed to stay away from the drug industry. And, you know, a lot of people pick on him because he's very outwardly amoral with his actions.
It's just a softball win.
Yeah. And then there's this.
GSK was warned repeatedly about Zantac impurity, but played down risks.
It's GlaxoSmithKline. If you work in the IT industry, chances are you've had an interaction with the Zantac at some point, probably. Very highly prescribed. A lot of people may have given some people some cancer.
Ooh.
Yeah, there's no consistent or reliable evidence that the medicine causes cancer, but a new report in Bloomberg Businessweek says GSK's own scientists have long known about the drug's risks.
Oh. Imagine getting it's a heartburn medication.
That's not a drug.
No, words don't mean anything anymore.
Got another story from Phys.org.
New report exposes steep declines in data science skills among 4th and 8th grade readers across America. It's graders. Blech. My ability to read titles is also severely impacted this week.
Do you think that when the AI gets a little bit better, that we'll have a bunch of 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders that are dependent on AI to summarize things for them before they can?
Yes. There was a whole section on the standardized tests that I used to take, like the ACT, that was just reading graphs and stuff. I don't know if kids, do they do better on that, you think, now?
Engagement challenge. Do your kids have trouble reading graphs? Do people still misunderstand that a quarter pounder is less than a third pounder?
I saw another study that was, I think it was for American students, and it was like most people read at like a 4th or 5th grade level, and they don't comprehend things when they read them. We
can't fix anything until we fix that.
Yeah, I agree.
Otherwise, we'll be making mistakes and not understanding things.
Yes. Hey, that was a segue. U.S. fighter jet shoots down airborne object over Lake Huron on Sunday. This was a big story. It was exciting. I was gone for a few hours, and then I came back, and it was like, there's another balloon.
Apparently nothing to do with China.
Yeah, this one's just another...
We don't know. Maybe they're not really a lot. It was in civilian airspace. May have been a school's Pico balloon. So a very small balloon in the grand scheme of things. Where small is probably about half the size of a car or less.
Yeah, they confirmed it wasn't aliens. They confirmed it wasn't China. So at this point, it's looking like probably someone's project.
We also had the really severe earthquake in Turkey. A lot of questions over the earthquake fund in Turkey. A lot of people died. Huge tragedy. But also the satellite images.
Turkey earthquake opened 190-mile-long fissure. Satellite images show. I think there were photos of this as well that I saw.
There were some places on land where the roads had shifted 10 feet.
Yeah.
So you'd see the road going along and then the road very sharply just in the span of a few feet along the road, it moves 10 feet to one side, which is incredible.
Yeah. I was watching a video about earthquakes last night, and it was talking about how in California, you can have a really like high on the Richter scale earthquake, so like a 5.0, but people won't feel it unless you're like directly around the radius because the crust in that part of the country is young and it's very thin. But as you move east, when we have earthquakes, which is much rarer, thankfully, but like the crust is much older and it's thicker, but that means more people feel it because it's so rigid. It's really cool.
It's really interesting. Out west, they're having a lot of problems with potable water. A lot of people live out there. A lot of people depend on a lot of sources for potable water. And then we have things like golf courses and lawn watering. It's like, wait a minute, there's a water shortage. What are we doing? And then there's this, and it's the Salt Lake Tribune.
Utah lawmakers say more information on golf course water might lead to uninformed conclusions, which reads like actually they would be informed and the information would make them think, maybe we should stop directing water to the golf courses.
Bill to require water use disclosure was watered down, and then they voted it down on the House floor. So we're in a water shortage. We need to disclose how we're using the water. People might get confused about the whole golf course thing. It's artificial turf. It's like, great, let's talk about that.
No, we don't want to because that requires change. The other thing too, we just did a story like a week or two ago about how all of the different states in that area that rely on the Colorado River Basin have failed to come to any kind of conclusion about how we're going to share this water. So, let's just keep kicking that can down the road and pretend it's not happening.
But you know what we can all agree on? That chicken fighting is cruel and unusual, and we shouldn't do it, and it should definitely be outlawed, and should not be a thing that we support anywhere. Oh, wait.
Oklahoma cockfighting industry says criminal penalties are too steep.
Are they?
Is there a cockfighting industry in Oklahoma?
There is.
I mean, there's one around here, but like it's underground because that is illegal.
Even Kentucky has gotten with the program, and to an extent.
I mean, it's still happening again underground, but like if you get caught, you get in trouble.
Yeah.
I like that. The way that they phrase that in the headline, it makes it sound like it's a legitimate industry. Like they have like a couple, big conferences a few times a year. Team building events.
It's a fun article. I've also seen a number of I don't know if it's just the algorithm or something that has gone up, but there are a few YouTubers that I follow in London, and they'll just do walking around the street in London, and two of them have been robbed. One of them just had their cell phone taken, and another one has their camera and their cell phone and everything else taken. And then there was this.
Armed robbers target people with Canada Goose coats. Are these the ones that have the really fancy down? Yeah.
Okay. So this is fun. This was in George Washington University, though. So this wasn't even in the UK. This is in DC.
Never been mugged. Hope I never am.
Yeah, that would be bad. Although, I think we've all been mugged with what happened in Ohio.
Yeah. East Palestine derailment. Chemicals appear to pose low risk of health hazards, state officials say.
Remember this story. When we have the stories, when future Level 1 tech shows have the stories about, that was wrong.
As people from where we're from, Eastern Kentucky, we don't really believe this kind of stuff when they say it, because they're always like, it's not that bad. And then it's like, also don't shower in the water and never drink it.
Yeah. It's like this, a certain amount of arsenic is completely fine. It's you'll be all right. And it's like
there are some areas of the Sheltoy Trace, which is our long trail here in Kentucky, where when you read the guidebook, it's like, don't drink out of this water source because it's contaminated. And it's like, well, what's it contaminated with? And it just doesn't say. Don't drink out of it.
Don't do it. It's bad. It's bacteria and also arsenic.
It's like, but I have a filter that filters out bacteria, and it's like, well, your filter won't get that.
Oh, speaking of societal filters that should have filtered out these folks a long time ago.
Police have uncovered a ring of 17 men believed to have filmed 10,000 women bathing in hot springs across Japan.
Oh, it's just so gross.
Oh, that's sad nonsense. Oh, this is also sad nonsense. The U.S. government says women's underwear should cost more than men's.
Obviously, because it's more complicated.
It's really not. It's also less fabric, if we're being honest. So less material.
Oh, my goodness. It's so... speaking of things that are non-obvious.
Edmonton police detective who missed body at double homicide scene demoted. Well, that's fair.
I mean, it's not even like the body was horribly mangled or anything. It's like, oh wait,
It was just dragged into the bushes a little bit. Its foot was sticking out.
this has got to be the character on which the Simpsons person was.
No, it's Augustus Gloop. It's Augustus Gloop. Got sent into the tubes.
Oh yeah, our next. Yeah.
Yeah, Mars Wrigley factory fined after 2 workers fall into chocolate vat. The Oompa Loompas had to fish him out. Actually, I didn't read that. So what was the? Did they make it out? Were they okay?
Yeah. Well, yeah.
That would probably be hot chocolate, right?
Yeah, but it was OSHA violations. It's like,
right. They shouldn't have fallen in at all.
Yeah, there's like, wait, we should have some rails and there should be safety here, and there really wasn't a lot of detail. But it was they fell into a batching tank used to mix ingredients. So
that's even worse because there's like a big metal mixer at the bottom.
Or the implied thing in the Willy Wonka, it's like, oh, send him to the taffy puller to try to make him larger, and it's like, will that work the way that you intend? I'm not sure that will. This is a crime against humanity.
It is. I've seen the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile. Hot dog hell. Catalytic converters stolen from the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile.
If the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile is not safe, what is safe in this day and age?
I've seen it. I have a sticker too I got from it.
Do you think we could translate? Is there some future AI that is going to translate that or correlate that? It's like catalytic converter thefts crossed the threshold during the economic collapse, such that the Oscar Mayer Wienermobile is kind of like the groundhogs. Like, did the groundhog see its shadow? And it's like, oh, did the Oscar Wienermeyer
the OMW for short. Every time you try to say it gets harder and harder to say.
Is the on the OMW scale, and it's like, oh, it lost 2 converters in 1 year. It's like, well, that was
the local food bank here has had multiple stolen off of it, and its generator. It has a generator because they do like hot meals for seniors in the area, and that has been stolen twice.
What kind of terrible human being do you have to be?
They had to install a fence around where they park it, and that still didn't deter them.
Speaking of, what kind of person do you have to be to send out an alert about this kind of thing?
Wyoming Republican Party alerts members against child marriage bill. I think Wyoming is one of the only states that still I can't remember the exact details, so I might have this wrong, but I think they don't have a minimum age, or if it is, it's very low compared to other states.
The YouTube video is kind of funny. It's like, oh, they're getting pregnant, but they're not getting married, and it's like, I don't know. And also, we actually covered this. It was apparently illegal.
6 journalists arrested over footage of South Sudan President wedding himself.
We literally, on the Level 1 news. Oops.
Well, they'll jail us for it. We can't ever go there.
Well, I'm going to have to take Sudan off my bucket list.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the places you're going to travel this year, right?
Oh, no. Also making the cut list for places that I'm not going. Mississippi.
Yeah. Mississippi hit by 900% increase in newborns treated for syphilis. I'm blown away that syphilis is going untreated in anybody, because it's just antibiotics. Like, even if you have some other infection some other time, like, I would think that would treat it.
Is there something else wrong with society, that the hospitals are all clogged up? Or is it the collapse of our healthcare industry in general? Or is it because of everyone's experiences with the insurance industry?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, they speculated. I read this elsewhere, but like, they speculate on a couple of reasons, but man, that's bleak.
Yeah, this should have happened 100 years ago.
Also, that picture in the middle, that triggers my, tryptophobia?
Oh, yeah, fear
it's
of
like
the dots.
the dots. Ugh.
Oh, no, not good. And also, some people are noticing something's wrong with the insects. If we're going to be eating insect meats, they should be here, right?
I added the story. European insect populations tumble. So this is a crazy amount, 70 to 80%.
Here is something that you need to do if you are 35 years old or younger. So I would say between 25 and 35 years old, and you started driving around the driving age, 16, 18, something like that, where you are. Think about road trips where you were driving the car for more than an hour. How many insects did you hit? What did the front of your car look like after a long road trip?
Disgusting.
And think about now, today.
Now, when I drive out to where I live, where I'm not in a town, I still get quite a few bugs on my windshield. And like, we still have fireflies. We still have a lot of that stuff. But it's definitely not to the numbers what it was when I was young. I
mean, I'm thinking about 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, when I would drive to like where Micro Center is, an hour and a half-ish away. there was a non-trivial amount of insects on the car.
Yeah.
And that was highway driving.
Yeah, not even country. Yeah.
And that is not the case anymore.
That should make you very nervous because insects are what pollinates our plants and they're kind of the base of the food web.
Aerodynamics have not improved that much in 10 years. A little bit. Not that much.
Plant native plants in your gardens. Turn off overhead lights so more animals will congregate in your yard. The future is fertile.
The insecticides apparently are really good.
Yeah, don't use insecticides unless you absolutely have to. Be very sparing, and if you can, don't use them at all.
You know what else I'm sure that Ryan would hope is really good?
Male contraceptive pill prototype stop sperm swimming.
He would say, sounds great.
Made it through that one clear as day, and there was a lot of alliteration in there. Messed up every other headline in the last section.
This one is also fun. Like
this is cool. This is called Cobb Building.
I would totally live in a mud house.
Eco-friendly mud houses make comeback in Hungary. So the cost of things like concrete is so obscenely high right now that people are like, how did people build hundreds of years ago? And the traditional answer was mud houses, which are really, it's clay, sand, and straw. And when you mix all that together, it makes a very structurally sound thing. You do have to keep it covered, and you treat it with like linseed oil to keep it waterproof. But it's actually a really good building material.
It will absorb and emit water vapor as well.
Yeah.
So in winter and summer, it behaves differently because of the temperature gradient. And because it's pulling moisture out of the air in summertime, it has a natural cooling effect.
Yeah.
Which is awesome.
It was the kind of thing we need. Someone mentioned that they had a cob house. And they were like, people, when they come in the summer, they're like, ooh, do you have the air on? And they're just like, no, it's just cold because it's insulated. It's thick walls.
Foot thick mud walls.
Yeah.
We, when I was a kid, we did tours of Native American reservations.
Yeah.
And they had some of that. It was like the adobo housing. I'm sure it's different. But I remember it being uncomfortably, insanely hot and bright outside, and there never being enough sunscreen. But then when we were doing the tour, there was like this entire adobo complex that we went through, and it was so much more comfortable inside.
Yeah.
And it was just, how is this even possible?
It makes me want to like do a little experiment on my own little patch of woods and just try to build something like that myself just to test it.
Fun times.
Yeah.
And also fun times for me.
Yeah.
I might be able to have one thing from McDonald's now.
Foul-free. McDonald's debuts plant-based McNuggets. I included this story just for you.
Yeah.
It's Wendell bait.
I've leaned hard into the cardio and the plant-based diet, but this is probably still not great for me.
No, yeah, I mean, health-wise, probably still not awesome, but probably an improvement, right? Like if you're on a road trip and it's like, or at an airport, it's like, I can't get anything else. Maybe you can get some plant-based McNuggets.
Plant-based McNuggets.
Yeah. All right, that's actually a good. I guess it'll probably be okay where you're going to be. I'll say.
Oh yeah, it'll be fine.
Getting vegetarian food.
Yeah, no problem. Should be good. Fun times. Oh, and this looks really good. I'm not even a super fan, and this looks like a lot of fun.
This is Chris debate. I've actually had multiple people tag me on the forum and stuff about this. Lego Lord of the Rings Rivendell set with 6,000 pieces is insanely detailed. I love the roof.
$500.
Whew, I'm not in love with that price, and I probably will never buy it, but it is a really beautiful set.
Somebody will definitely get that for you for a present.
Yeah. My husband loves to put together Lego sets. We have a little Lego town in our office.
6,000 Legos is probably going to take you both a little while to put together.
Yeah.
But look at that. There's the council of
the whole
Elrond.
Elrond.
Yeah, it's just amazing. Yeah, so you should check that out.
It's beautiful.
If
you're into Lego and you have $500.
And Amazon really, really wants... Oh, no, this is HBO.
Yeah. So hilarious.
They missed an opportunity.
Yeah, when Amazon was doing their debut of Lord of the Rings, HBO ran ads saying, like, watch the Lord of the Rings on our channel, like the original series. And it was like, ooh, that's kind of underhanded.
Do you not want to take medicine when you get all stopped up on the inside? Well, I've got some good news for something that is not a drug or any kind of anything that modifies things.
This pill treats constipation by vibrating its way through your body.
Neat.
Do you think that's real?
On the one hand, I can see if you don't want to eat something that will make you go, okay. But at the same time, now there's a tiny motor and a tiny battery that's part of our waste system. So maybe that's not super awesome.
Well, I'm sitting here thinking too, like just the mechanics of it. Like the problem is that your stool is too hard, but you still have like your internals are still squishing it, trying to move it down. But like, does the pill vibrating, does it just tunnel through?
Apparently it works. I can definitely tell you that in a lifetime of experience, sometimes after going to the treadmill, with the before state being, it feels like I need to go to the bathroom, but nothing's happening. And then after going on the treadmill for 30 minutes, a lot easier.
Oh, yeah. No, I find that too. A lot of times it's like, if I go on a hike or something before we leave wherever we're at, I'm like, I'm going to go to the bathroom like 3 times. And then as soon as we get on trail, I'm like, I got to go. I got to stop. Hang on.
It's almost like we were designed for certain things. It's we have our circulatory system. That's cool. But the lymph node system depends on you moving in order for it to do its thing. Sort of fun. This is also sort of terrifying.
Americans are ready to test embryos for future college chances. That's terrifying.
Ethicists are worried. It's almost like one of those clickbait headlines. It's like, see why ethicists are worried.
It's like, oh, they actually should be in this case.
As embryos are tested for college entrance scores. And
that's so far in the future. It's like, good grief.
No, that's today. That's today.
No, I mean, like, I'm thinking just from like the standpoint of like the little human being.
Oh, yeah.
Also, there's a lot that goes into just the baby's like whole life. Like, if it doesn't have support at home, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's gonna thrive in life.
Turns out.
Yeah.
Fun times. This is also fun times.
Murderer tries to escape maximum security prison disguised as a sheep.
So I got a lot of questions about this. Like, is it possible to get to a field filled with sheep as a prisoner without really a lot of headache? And it turns out that this prison is in BFE. So it's like, oh, you've escaped. Where are you going to go? And it turns out, nowhere.
Yeah. I mean, I guess you could walk for a certain, but you get hungry after a while.
Stealing catalytic converters is also dangerous business. Can you imagine this has been the pilot of the Wienermobile?
Oh, man run over, killed while allegedly trying to steal a catalytic converter.
And this article is worthless because the suspect was taken by ambulance, declared dead. The 3 people, a man and 2 women who accompanied the deceased suspect in the smaller vehicle, were arrested by the deputies. Was that the people who were driving the car that was operated as he was trying to steal the catalytic converter, or people that were accomplices?
Yeah.
Because
that's worded ambiguously.
It's
probably an AI generated article.
What a terrible, don't leave your readers hanging. Come on.
No, they do that so that way you engage on their Facebook page and argue with other people on the page.
Counterpoint. Here's another clickbait headline that is amazing and gives you all the follow through you need. And in fact, if you want to learn more, they've got their own TV special.
Oh, wow. Allentown couple discuss forgiveness, love decades after wife hired a hitman to kill husband.
So they've got some fun stories. You should go check that out.
Look at this where they're like laughing. They're like, oh, remember that time I tried to kill you?
Oh, Ethel, I know I can be frustrating, but you don't have to hire hitmen.
And then they high five each other.
That's amazing. I'm glad that worked out for them.
Yeah, I mean, it's good that they figured it out, but like, geez, shouldn't she be in jail or like get some kind of, well, not a jail, I guess, but like some sort of punishment?
Anybody that's been married, they know.
I don't know. I've never wanted to hire a hitman for my husband.
You just haven't been married long enough. It's
maybe.
And we're gonna have to censor the headline on this one just a little bit.
Oh yeah, body found in Pennsylvania Creek turns out to be a realistic
thing that
doll.
You expect what it is.
Yeah.
It's not a person, and it's made out of silicone. Extremely lifelike.
I could see someone, like, if it's evening at the park and you're taking a walk and it's like, is that a foot sticking out of the river? And like, you don't want to stick around to find out. I wouldn't. If I saw a body in the woods, I'd be like, okay, I'm hightailed. This is a problem for the forestry service. It's not me.
I see a lot of people driving around that have the it's like a piece of blue jeans with a foot and then closed in their trunk.
Especially like around Halloween, people do that. Yeah.
Well, and sometimes not at Halloween.
I like it too when at Christmas time when people do like the little reindeer, the nose on the front of the car. I think that's cute. I'm not like committed enough to do that to my car, but it's cute.
It's been 0 days since a superhero movie has caused an international incident.
France says its troops misrepresented in Wakanda Forever.
Haven't seen it. No idea what it's talking about. Thought it was funny.
Oh, I put that in there twice. Whoops. I haven't seen it either. I assume, perhaps incorrectly, that they made a joke about France always surrendering, because that's always a meme. Even though they were a pretty good military power.
Well, you know.
Anyway, Livingston Councilman hires private investigator to see if they can access you-know-what on public library computers.
They could, although there was a filter and it said, oh, they had to figure out a way around the filter. But this was to see if children could access the thing. And the answer was no, until they put some work into it, and then yes. And yet the takeaway here is we really need to put some,
But there's already stuff in place. Like, again, you can't replace adults actually monitoring children.
Right. Yes. And that's not the people that run the library. That's not their responsibility. That's the parents' responsibility.
Right.
But the fix, of course, obviously, is to demand that every website check an ID and say that nothing here is objectionable for a minor. Now, what if a parent doesn't want their kid to read Pride and Prejudice? What if their kid...
I just read that book on Project Gutenberg for free.
Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. Should check that out.
Oh, okay. I actually really liked the book because I'd watched the movie recently and I was like, I should read the book. I've never read this, and it was good.
Yeah. So, but what if there's stuff in there that you could see. It's like maybe you don't want.
I mean, Elizabeth is very spicy to Mr. Darcy. She puts him in his place multiple times in that novel.
So maybe as a parent, you don't want to find that. It's like, okay, I want you to block Project Gutenberg, and I want you to block this book on Project Gutenberg. Suddenly, it sounds much less reasonable than just parent your kid.
Yeah, just make sure that you know what they're doing online.
Yeah. So, and I'm sure that you could, with the appropriate thing, you can get to a lot of stuff. The only real fix, if you're going to do this, is to have a whitelist of websites that you can go to, and that's it. That's it.
Which is what a lot of public schools do. And it's like, is that necessary for a library that serves more than just children?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And our last nonsense story of the week.
As pythons try to hide, they face a new enemy. Possums with GPS collars.
Pythons, without any natural predators, sort of cause problems. But it turns out pythons and possums go together like oil and vinegar.
Possums kind of like, is there any animal that possums are like, yeah, I'll hang out with you?
Possums are kind of territorial. Like
they're mean.
They're fine if like mom's cat learned to get along with the possums and the possums tolerated its presence, but there was a very clear social hierarchy.
Yeah, that cat was like at the bottom of that.
Yeah.
Every time I've seen a possum, like even if I'm 30 feet away, if it looks at me, it hisses.
I think what's going to be funny is that we're going to find like the cure for cancer in possums or something because they are just so resilient.
They're tick resistant.
And they've learned to live with arsenic, and they've learned to live with all these horrible diseases, and they don't really get infections, and they don't really possums are like just nuts.
My favorite conspiracy theory is that when things were getting made, that we got Australia's possum and that Australia got what was supposed to be the North American possum because theirs is really cute and cuddly and sweet, but ours are terrible. And it's like, that should have been down there. There was a mix-up somewhere.
That's an Australia class animal.
Yeah.
Not an America class animal. Someone has made a mistake. There were a couple of challenges in snafu. This is actually kind of a long article for this. There's some funny stuff in here. 231 snakes killed, a small fraction of the tens of thousands that the U.S. Geological Survey estimates are lurking wild in the state.
Invasive species.
Yeah, they had been tracking them with beagles, which, the beagles were good at finding them, but murdering them and stopping their reproduction, not so much.
Yeah.
So,
but possums have no qualms about killing. Look at him.
Look at that.
He's ready to kill.
Yeah, when you you're gonna get rabies probably, so don't challenge the possum because you might win the battle, but in the end you'll lose the war.
Yeah.
All right, that's enough for that for this week. We made it 46 minutes. You got a extra giant helping of Level 1 news this week, even though Ryan is out. That's fine. We will thank you to all of our subscribers on Patreon and Floatplane, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next week.
Bye.